Welcome everyone. Welcome to Neutral Lounge, a podcast about video games and computer technology. I'm your host Joel, and with me is my co-host Al and our guest Jay. Together we make up the Neutral Lounge. In this episode we talk about Xbox and Halo. Is Halo truly infinite? Genshin Anniversary. What's the impact? A pat on the back or a slap in the face? China locks down gaming for under 16s. Conscientious government or state control? Our favourite console generations and why? Intel Alderlake rekindles competition. And Activision Blizzard news. Bobby Kotick. Hell no, he won't go. Without further ado, let's talk tech. Hey Al.
Hey Joe.
And Jay, of course.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, really good. Looking forward to Christmas. Hopefully get some more time to play more games and Halo.
Yeah.
Happy man there.
Well, I don't know. Well, I just see what this new COVID variant is going to do as well.
Oh. Al, don't depress me because I've got a holiday planned to
What?
Thailand over the Christmas.
You should
The first
still
time
be
I've
able
ever
to
done
get
this.
away. It depends if they block you to arrive.
Yeah, that'll be the problem. They've just opened up, so it'd be a shame if I couldn't get there because it's something that obviously I've been looking forward to now.
Yeah.
And I've never really attempted to be away at Christmas before.
we were meant to go away to Disneyland last year, and you can imagine all the promises we made to the kids, and that rug got pulled out. So we're going away to Dubai this year. Fingers crossed we either don't go or we go and can make it back. You don't want to get stuck over there.
Yeah. Well, it just depends on what it's going to be. Well, it's too early to say with that new variant. But yeah, obviously UK's already taken some steps, but yeah, we don't know at this stage. There's not enough information. So yeah.
No, you gotta go as planned, right? So, and I think the country, the world needs to be allowed to kind of do the whole Christmas thing. I mean, how depressing would that be? Another year without a family get together or get together with friends. So I'm hoping it it stays as is. Obviously we take precautions and everything. Again, I'm getting to see more and more people, which is cool.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. And with those pleasantries out of the way, let's drop in to our first topic. Okay guys, I think the first topic we want to talk about is really Xbox and Halo. So I titled this one, Is Halo Truly Infinite? Obviously the multiplayer is out now. There's a warmer feeling around the campaign, and it feels like Microsoft and Xbox have really got a clear run towards Christmas. There's not an awful lot happening in other camps. So I just, I wanted to get your thoughts on that, and I think, Jay, we're going to start with you, because I know you've been kind of grinding away at Halo,
on the Infinite Battle Pass.
Yeah, on the Infinite Battle Pass. That is the one true infinite thing about Halo, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Take it away,
Yeah,
mate.
sure. So I'll start with kind of the big picture. So I had the original Xbox. I've got very fond memories of it, and I kind of not been interested for a number of years, but I really get that warm feeling from Xbox, what they're doing with some of their games coming out with Horizon 5, which I haven't played, but it's reviewed very well, and then obviously playing Halo. I just feel in a kind of in a happy place with Xbox, right? Which I think is important because just liking one game is not good enough for me. I really want to believe in the brand and the console and when they're going. So that's the first thing. In regards to Halo, I played the two betas earlier in the year, and to be honest, I was just blown away. And the main thing for me is the sandbox has to be fun. As much as what we say about Destiny, the sandbox is what keeps you coming back. And whenever I play any first-person shooters, that's the first thing I test, right? And for me, I was sold by the betas. I've been waiting for the multiplayer to drop. It dropped on the 15th of November, which was during Xbox's I think 30th anniversary celebration, and it was a kind of the
20th.
Oh, sorry, 20th.
Yeah,
Right, 20th. Sorry, 20th.
Yeah.
And I was on it straight away, and I've literally played it every day since, and I think it's amazing, and it's amazing on a number of fronts, right? But let's start with the kind of the sandbox. Halo was all about the feel, just something special, and it's one of those things you just can't explain to anybody unless you play it, and this game has got it. The Halo feel is back. Doesn't matter what happens with not having enough maps, or not enough battle pass, or even what happens with the single player, which is probably a separate thread, right? But this has got a solid platform for. I think they're planning for the next 10 years. I'm hooked. It's going to be my multiplayer game. I think my main first person.
The sandbox you're talking about, I mean, the way I kind of think about that, it's the core mechanics, and it's the core of the game and what you can do in the kind of like play area.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So there's the animations of the character and the micro movements of the gun. It just feels like the original, but modern. I had played 4 and a little bit of 5, and I didn't like it. But I played more of the first 3, and this feels like the first 3.
Good to hear.
It's got other things that are actually dynamic. For example, there are they have these kind of like booster ramps that allow you that push you across the map, because some of the maps are quite large. You can throw a grenade into that, and it'll bob along the ground and fire off into the distance. You have this thing on your arm where it's like a repel mechanic, right? And
it's a repulsor, right?
Yeah.
They call it
you can throw the grenade, repulse the grenade into the kind of the ramp thing, and then it will fly across. You can drop. You got that mechanic to drop a weapon, can't you? You can hold 2 weapons. You can drop one, either because you pick something else, or you can just ditch it. You can ditch it on that ramp, and it'll fly across the map. So many games, the vehicles just feel off, particularly aerial vehicles. They're very hard to get right. The aerial vehicles on this are amazing. There's I forgot the name of what the name of the vehicle is. It's kind of like
the Banshee.
No, it's not.
Not a Banshee.
No, it's slightly different to that. There's it's a human aircraft. It kind of looks like something out of Avatar, and it can float around.
Okay.
It is on point. There's no fiddly bit to it. And you try any vehicle. There's a vehicle that's kind of got like it's like a lawnmower type thing, and it tilts.
Yeah.
Every single vehicle feels amazing. There's no like some vehicles in the games that they feel kind of good, and you turn, and it's not quite right. Everything is on point. The sandbox is I don't want to swear, but it is so good. The weapons, right? The weapons. Each weapon is right. So you get the standard weapons, right? The one that the auto rifle and the pistol. They are all on point, right? There's a couple that need a bit of tuning, but some of the newer ones, like there's it's like a rocket launcher, but it fires a kind of like a pole. So you can have someone driving on a vehicle, and it'll just knock the vehicle flying in the air, and even that's dynamic. So the sandbox is in such a way that it allows them to add new weapons or new abilities, and it's going to keep it fresh. I sent you guys a clip which you've probably not seen.
I saw it.
There's mechanics in mechanics as well. So, for example, you can drop something on the ground, fire the gun, and use that to conduct electricity into another player. But that's not a core part of the weapon. So it's absolutely solid.
I always remember kind of Halo just doing kind of vehicles extremely well, because I'm a fan of the first 3, and I played the latter 2 spin-offs, Never really got onto the kind of latter two games, that's for sure. To me, it's just like the physics of the game, if you
Mm.
know what I mean. Yeah, like you said, the feel of the gunplay, and it just does the real simple things extremely well.
It's polished. It's polished. It's really
Yeah,
polished. Again, like you were saying about the campaign, I, for me, the campaign is important, but the enduring thing is the multiplayer. Because like, like Destiny has lost its way on the PvP. It really has. But this, I can talk about it briefly without going on a tangent. They're tuning every part of the sandbox for December on Destiny. Like every single ability is being tuned, and they are actually first time making a split difference, although minor, between PvE and PvP, which is going to make a difference. But the state it's been in the last couple of years, Destiny is kind of not, the PvP is not good. This is this is my PvP game done, and Destiny, as you guys know, you have to invest a lot of time on the kind of the inventory and the currencies. This is perfect. I can go to my kickboxing class, come back, play for, shower up, play for an hour, and I feel good when I go to bed. So yeah, so the sandbox is amazing. Just kind of pivoting, weapons, all absolutely solid. They're fun. They're just, you have you'll have it is so fluid jumping between the weapons in the game when people drop them. You each weapon is so distinct, particularly the new ones, that they clearly have a purpose in the play dynamic when you're playing. So depend if you're playing oddball, or if you're playing team battle, or if you're playing Slayer. At the moment, there's a week festival called Fiesta where you start with two random weapons. When someone drops weapon, when someone dies, you actually want to discover what's there, and where you are on the map will actually dictate what weapon you want to change. So it works really well. The maps with that sort of rose tinted glasses, I love them. I think that there's a good variety. When I first started playing, the color palette was probably, I've been spoiled by Destiny because it's all vibrant colours and real. There is a little bit of sameness, but the actual map design is amazing. The weapons you pick off the wall. Destiny's map design does not have the same level of thought because Halo drop has weapons on placed on the ground on the wall throughout the map. So every segment of the map has a specific design for that weapon. So if it's a pistol, the room is such as a pistol type of fight. If it's a rocket launcher, you've got the space and the angles to shoot, or if it's a sniper, they've all been strategically placed. So the map design and the weapons where they are, if you play it enough, it's all had thought behind it.
that's another strong element to the old Halos as well, really, because I remember kind of multiplayer on the old Halos, and again, it was always the level design was so strong. You know what I mean? I mean, it's still an arena
Hmm.
shooter. It kind of felt a bigger arena shooter at the time, but it just sounds like they've had long list of what did Halo do really well, and they've just been systematically ticking it off. If you know what I mean, almost.
100%. And they've gone back to the original. Like if you think about, uh, there's a game called Splitgate, right, which has been quite popular. It's got the same game modes as the original Halo, and there's not been many other games that have really copied it for a while. It's got, Call of Duty's gone their own way, Battlefield has gone its own way, Apex has gone its
Yeah,
own way. For me, now I would imagine you guys as well and others, those game modes are proven. Slayer, Oddball, team battle, and there'll be modes such as, and they're not in the game at the moment, right, where you just have snipers or shotguns, you know, those type of things which will come. They've basically, the summary is they've nailed it. This game is fundamentally at its core absolutely solid. And I would say if you are going to play it, there is a bit of an adjustment because, for example, the sprint is quite nerfed, but it works really well, and that's probably another positive I want to talk about. Destiny has that the time to kill is not that quick, so you have that kind of battle between each player, right? Where you don't get that necessarily in Battlefield or Call of Duty. Halo is the same, But Halo doesn't have the kind of the space magic that Destiny does. So it really is that really jumping around, and your body gets tight, and you're like, and that feeling when you kill someone in that mode, you can't replace it. And um,
How does the grappling hook come
oh,
into play?
grappling.
The first time I saw it when they announced it, right, I thought, what's this grappling hook? Was it trying to be Bionic Commando or something? Which is an old school 2D kind of platform game.
So the grappling hook is okay. So some of the abilities like the grappling hook, you won't get access to all the time, but it comes up more frequently than you probably think. Um, to be honest, I haven't. In the betas, you got it whenever you started because they wanted people to try it out, right? And I was sold then. When you play the game now, you don't always get it. But that clip I sent you, where if you face a certain direction and fire the grappling hook, it changes the momentum of the swing. So I'm looking forward to actually playing around with more with it. It's this is probably less my experience with what I've heard. Or people who are in the industry, they're saying it's the best implementation of a grappling hook. I think Titanfall and Apex have got a really good one. This is solid as well.
Yeah.
There's no like with the vehicles. There's no it works 80% of the time, but there's 20% of the time when it's kind of janky. There's nothing janky in the sandbox. I would say it's I should probably stop on the positive because I don't want to overdo it. But I genuinely really impressed. I'm sold.
Yeah, I mean, I saw clips of the actual grappling hook, and you can use it offensively and as well as defensively, from what I could make out. And I've thought, yeah, that's some legs, and obviously the levels, being what they are, have a lot more verticality to them.
They do, yeah.
And I think the kind of grappling hook looks as if it kind of plays quite a big part in all of that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guessing you can traverse it without it, but I mean, it's there if you know.
Yeah, I don't think you'll get it enough to really be swinging around all the place. You get it enough that if you're a skilled player, you'll situationally use it appropriately. It's not swinging around everywhere. The game is boots on the ground type of gameplay, and you're constantly in that kind of one-on-one jumping around and who's got the right angle, and depending on your weapon. I'm glad because I bought the Xbox.
Yeah, it's something to play on it now.
Other positives, and I'll move on to those in a second. Right, it's free to play. It is got to be the most polished free to play game. I mean, I've played Apex, right, and I do like the feel, but it doesn't have the same what's the universe and the map style and the heritage and the feels as Halo.
The best way you can say about it is it's actually Halo in its prime. It just sounds like Halo in its prime.
It is. It's 343 are saved. I think it is a solid platform to go from. It's in a similar way. You know, when Destiny came out, everything was a shit show. The story, the amount of content, but the foundation sandbox was absolutely solid. This is solid as well. It's you can't fix it once you land with a cranky sandbox, and they've landed a really good sandbox. It's just kind of going on the negatives. The battle pass is a joke. It is a grind fest. So they've got a good pool of kind of like objectives or sub objectives, like kind of achievements you have to get. Use this weapon this many kills, or complete this match, or take down a warthog with that rocket launcher with the pole I was talking about. But the way they've implemented is terrible. So it'll pick from that pool 4 or 5 objectives, and you can't choose the game mode at the moment. So you have to wait for some of the game modes to come for the objectives. You weren't getting XP for completing a game or winning.
Yeah.
They've since fixed it, so you get a minor bit of XP.
But in effect, you don't get progression by playing the game all the time.
No, they've done a little bit of a plaster fix, so you get a little bit now, but they've fudged it, so the UI doesn't tell you that it does, but it does. But just generally the battle pass, yeah, it needs significant rework for reward versus effort, and like we used to with other games, right? It needs work in terms of more customization of objectives. The customization of the characters and the vehicles is really good. You can change helmet attachments, visor, shoulder, wrist, gloves, kind of like there's an item right you put around the waist like a holster for guns. Then you can put a logo on your chest, like you can put logos on the side of your guns. You can have those things that dangle, like Rainbow Six, what they called the
emblems or whatever they were.
Yeah, but they're like 3D objects that kind of like hang on the gun. You can put logos on your vehicles. You can change the color of it. The subcategories of customization there's so many. Even your name tag, the background, the banner on top, the number and the logo. The categories. But what they give you in the battle pass is pretty shit. You know, like a blue and a pink. Towards the end of the battle pass, it's got some cool things like a flaming head, flaming arms. There has been some leaks about some really cool customization, like a fox head and a pig head. It's got the foundation again of really good customization. But what they give you in the battle pass, which I paid £7 for, or £8 for, which is meant to last 3 months, but it's going to last 5. You know, I bought it because it just gives me a little bit of progression. But what they give you is probably not good enough. It needs to be more rewarding, and I think they'll tune that. In the database, people have leaked as well. There's I think £1,000 worth of items that are locked away in the store. It seems like they purposely swung it to let's give the guys the bare minimum, let them moan, and then we'll tune it up. Yeah,
makes sense.
And maps wise, just last thing, maps wise, I think they've got 10 or 12 maps, probably 12 maps. They could do with more maps, but I'm sure they'll add that more with time. They'll.
Yeah. What's the size of the PvP? As in, is it 16 against 16,
yeah.
32, or
it's 24 for big team battle. Otherwise, it's 16 versus 16, or it's 4 versus 4 normally.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it works. It's like you will constantly have encounters in the team in the big team battle, and you're not overwhelmed. And then the other maps are 4 versus 4 is perfect as well. They know how to make that kind of stuff. I've been doing it for years, so that works quite well. There was one of the big team battles has got a loot box thing. So on the map in the middle of both sides, you go up to a panel and you have like this AI. The AI drops on the panel. It works on it for like 20 seconds. The door open, and then there will be like one of the heavy weapons, like a rocket launcher or the gravity hammer. And then you walk around it, and then it takes you up a stairway up to a higher platform. Then you jump out on the map. But it's like a loot cave. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. And the items in there change, so it's encouraging to see.
The multiplayer looks in fairly good shape. From what I've seen myself and what Jay's kind of like, he's waxing lyrical.
Yeah.
So he clearly loves the game.
It's free, guys. Just go and play it.
It's
free. It's free.
I think definitely on my list of things to download soon and start playing. But yeah, I think if they get the reward and progression stuff sorted, like the battle pass and other things, I think it sounds like it's got a really good future.
Almost perfection. Yeah, almost perfection.
They've got I forgot his name now. The one of the old Bungie guys to come back. I think Jason.
He's the creative lead on it, isn't he? Now.
Yeah. I forgot his name now.
Staten. Joel. Is it? Yeah, Joel Staten.
Joe Staten. Yeah. So Joe is one of the. He worked on Halo and a few games before with Bungie back in the day, and then I think he worked on Destiny, but was part of a dispute and left before Destiny released. But having him at the helm is he knows what he's doing. You know, he wrote some of the original stories within Halo. He knows what Halo is. The fact that he came in last year and they've got the multiplayer in its state that it is, and he's hanging around, gives me confidence that and he's made the hard decisions of co-op's gone back even further. The I forgot the name of the customization feature. Forge is also being pushed back, and that, if they push things back and they're producing a solid product like this, I don't mind, because how many look at Battlefield. It's a complete mess. Call of Duty, complete mess. So Halo landing this well multiplayer and being free to play, timing's worked out really well. They just need to get the battle pass.
I think it's a sign of the times, really. I think you can. I mean, we said it in the last podcast, but I think you're going to see more and more of this. I just get the impression that this is the route people are going to go as games get more complex, and you get to a point where you have to drop the game, because without you dropping the game, no one's making any or recouping their investment. No one's making any money, and invariably there's going to be a lot of pissed off people. So I just forget the sense you're going to see more and more of this.
Without going off on a tangent, I think it's happened too much recently in the last few years that it's impacting brands. I mean, Battlefield has flopped a few times. I think they're finished now. I would say they could probably turn this game around, but no one's going to trust them again now. I mean, look at.
I do wonder though if it kind of let's say affects people like us who've been gaming a long time, and we kind of had this kind of we remember what games used to be, right? Gold was when a game went gold, it was gold, but now it's a different sort of world now, and everything it's far more connected. It takes lots more money and people, and there's a far more complexity in games, and there's a get out of jail card, which is patches and downloads of those patches. I just think if this is the trend going forward and everybody's doing it, the next generation of gamers, this is all they'll know. If you know what I mean, they won't remember what it was like for a game to go gold.
But don't you think their attention span is shorter? They'll just bounce off and never come back.
But that's the reality of games these days, because there's so many games. I think there is a shorter attention span. Generally, you've got to be an absolute marquee player. It's just a god game almost to retain the kind of retention span you get that we had in the old days. I sound like such an old dude, but that's that's reality. And I think you've got so much choice these days that and again, it's the model people are following now with a gaming as a service and a platform. Yeah, by all means, bounce off for a little bit, apply a patch or an update, marketing machine spins up, back you come.
We talked about it before, didn't we? We talked about Dark Theory, about some of it being purposeful. But I think there's it's like I think Halo multiplayer has got the right balance of. Well, let's imagine they did it purposefully, right? It's got the sandbox is solid. Yeah. They messed up the battle pass, and the reward structure is really bad, purposely done, and they can tune it up. That way they can set their expectation that we are going to charge for some of these items, right? And we'll bring it back to a nice place. And then we've got a nice roadmap of things we're going to release next year to bring people back, co-op and Forge and new game modes. And it fills out their roadmap when they're going to probably publish in January. And that works well for them. But yeah, just kind of, I was going to ask, do you think I've hyped it enough that you guys are going to download it tonight or tomorrow?
Well, I was going to download it anyway, but yeah. But I think again, I mean, for me, I'm definitely going to want to play it. But going back to the state of kind of Halo multiplayer, I don't think Microsoft or Xbox could afford for this thing to be bad. I don't think it's a question of sales. It's a bit more of a mindshare sort of play, and the fact that when they first kind of showed it off, there was a lot of negativity around it. Yeah, and on the early days of a new platform, and one of that platforms, don't get me wrong, it's not about the Xbox console per se, well be about Game Pass. Yeah, they gotta build some goodwill here.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. It's gotta be good. And what you say about Halo. Halo has lost a lot of its sheen over the years for one reason or another. But Halo's the Mario of Xbox. No matter
Yeah,
what
true.
no matter what you think about it, it is. You just can't
Yeah.
mess this up. You know what I mean? You've got to give it some love. And talking about love, before I get too deep in, campaign-wise, obviously we're gonna. I think we're gonna see that
That's
8th of
true.
December, right?
But
And I think there's less
but
information
some of the
about that.
but quite a few of the publishers have already played the first 4 missions, and they're all pretty positive about it. They're more confident than they were because it was a black hole,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
they say that the level design and the semi-open world and the narrative seems to be good, but you've seen that in sort of games. The first couple of levels are good, then it just tanks after that. But
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
fact that
yeah.
they've let so many people play it already is a positive sign. Um, Again, if it doesn't land that well, the funny slow down. There are a couple of moments for split seconds where if you're using some of the bigger weapons and it's reloading, it's a minor hitch, but other than that, it's 60 frames, solid 4K. It's really really good, and I'm sure the
Yeah.
PC they'll bring it back up to if it's slightly less performant than that. I think it was hitting around 60 on like top end graphics card, not 60, 90 frames per second, or kind of a top spec on the good really high end PC graphics, which is not really good enough. It should be like at least 120 as a bare minimum, but optimization will fix all of that. But yeah, on the Xbox Series X, solid
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah, I just hope that the campaign's going to be, super stellar. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you kind of like associate campaign with Halo. In the campaign in the first kind of few games was just amazing. So you kind of want a little bit more of that. And yet you're almost kind of talking about it's almost two distinct
It
games.
is, yeah.
The
It
way we
will
kind
be.
of,
Yeah, it
people are
will be.
covering
If you
it.
think of PvP versus PvE. So.
It will be. Will be
Yeah,
the other menus. They are fast. They're rapid. That's really good. And connectivity into a game, solid. Doesn't take long. Obviously, Microsoft has got Azure, so they're dedicated servers, which you don't get on
yeah, yeah.
Destiny. I've been playing a lot of in the last couple of weeks. Couch Smash Brothers with my siblings, and I've just completely forgotten how much fun that is. And that we were playing six player Smash Brothers, and Halo free to play it's got multiplayer. It's got 4 player split screen. So I was searching to see any videos of people actually using it. I've only seen a screenshot on Twitter, but I want to see how performant that is. But if it performs well, I'm going to get 2 more controllers. The game
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that good
Totally. I
that I'm
mean,
willing to give Microsoft the money. And I might only occasionally play it, but it's worth it. It's Halo.
yeah. I mean, that was that whole, full screen split screen multiplayer mode back in the day was amazing. You're so much fun with it. I do miss those, like getting everybody onto the couch, into a room, and then just gaming together. I mean, obviously everything's kind of remote these days, but you know, nothing beats kind of staring your enemy in the eye.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not in any rush just yet. I think I think I've had a long lull period of kind of how should I say first person shooter PvP. So I think the last one I really played was Apex. I've definitely been off it for quite some time.
Yeah, well, Halo Infinite might be
Well,
that game.
I'm looking forward to when we can play together at some point.
Yeah,
Yep, yep.
might be the game that finally pushes me to get a Series
If you
X or
can
something.
get hold of one.
You know. Yeah, that's the other thing. Is like there's not a lot of them about. I mean, I think that's the other thing. I mean, like with Xbox and Microsoft having what seems to be a clear run up towards Christmas. I mean, they're the ones who are really bringing the big guns out just before Christmas.
Yeah.
How do you think that will affect the perception of the console? I mean, do you think that will help with sales, or obviously if they can find a console, or is this just It's just what's expected as as an Xbox fan, as a Microsoft fan. This is what you're expecting. You know what I mean? Like Halo comes out, whether it comes out Christmas, spring, autumn, or whatever. You know, you're buying it.
I think. I mean, on this podcast, we all like different types of game. We probably got still more of a preference towards first-person shooters, but we like different stuff. I think a lot of the youth like first-person shooters is the FIFA or first-person shooters is what people go after, and I can imagine a lot of youngsters wanting to get this. I think they're gonna they're I don't think it's going to affect their sales short term because you can't get hold of a console. But I can
Yeah, that's the
imagine into
reality of it,
next
isn't it?
year, this is going to drive some significant brand awareness and people considering moving to the Xbox. Um, and for me, I'm looking for an excuse to get Game Pass. This gives me if the campaign is good, and we've got Horizon 5, which is reviewed 10 out of 10 really well. And then Starfield next year. There's a Redfall as well by Arcane. I'm just looking for excuses to buy the Game Pass.
Yeah, and there's all this other kind of indie stuff on it as well. There's plenty of stuff to be had there.
Exactly. And just one last thing, right? When I first I'm holding up a Xbox controller. I didn't quite like this controller when I first held it because I think the PS5 is quite good. But when you start playing this with Halo, it is a solid controller. It really
Oh, it is. Yeah,
it
yeah.
really
The
is,
Xbox controllers. Yeah.
and I just think the setup of the actual sticks where it's not not in the same actual
There's a slight like,
yeah
thing to it, isn't there?
it's
Like,
a solid controller. I really enjoy playing on it.
definitely. I don't know if there's much more to say about Halo because I think we're a bit more haloed out as much as I can see, right? So like, I think I've got to say that look, Halo looks as if that yeah, it could be infinite, right? I mean, there's certainly infinite possibilities in terms of what Microsoft and Xbox can do with it. At least for the 10-year roadmap they're talking about. And it's come out, it's definitely come out all guns blazing, which is good for everybody interested in kind of like first-person shooters. Xbox looks as if they got a winner on their hands, so I
The
think
sentiment's changing, I think, for Xbox. I think it's worked in their favour over the last year because the expectations were low.
yeah, that's very true. But that's everybody likes underdog, right? So you know what I mean. It's everybody likes to fight back. That's for sure. Especially the fight back of a very kind of beloved, like franchise in that IP. So guys, look. With that said, I think it's time to move on to our next topic. So guys, the next topic we want to talk about is the Genshin Impact Anniversary. So I think what I'll do for this one, as Al's the only person that really plays the game, is I'm just going to toss it over to him.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, it is, I don't know if you guys have been keeping an eye on it, but obviously I've been talking about it a lot on the podcast, but it's a very successful game, and I think basically they're part of a bigger company that, MiHoYo essentially are the company that essentially created Genshin Impact. But they've also created a number of games in the past as well, and actually a few of them are still active. And what people do is with these types of games is that they do sort of comparisons as to, oh, it's coming up to its anniversary. They expect these kind of lots of free gifts, lots of free things, and basically, when I think it kind of crossed over in September 28th, there was a few kind of announcements, but they were pretty rubbish in general. So basically, what happened was, I think Genshin has gone to this really strange mode of getting fans, getting players to do things on Twitter, on Facebook, on social media, essentially. Do art competitions, and only a subset of those people would then win, kind of gems or things to be able to roll for items within the game. And even then, it was quite stingy. And then obviously there'd be one that you may get some AirPods or something. But yeah, basically, I think off the back of the anniversary, people were just up in arms and saying, "No, this is rubbish. This is rubbish." And what quickly happened then was review bombing. So all over all over Reddit, Metacritic, you can call it Steam Store, the Google Play Store, the iOS store, literally 1-star reviews, just absolutely spamming them down. And it's just, you got to think that, is it the player base? Should they really be doing that? And that sort of stuff? Do they feel entitled to do that? Because I guess what the company is doing is that they're not giving you these free items because they consider it as money that you wouldn't spend in the game if you got that free item. Yeah, I think people were just up in arms at that point, and I was already thinking, I hope they would do something, but they didn't really do anything, and they allowed this review bombing to happen. They did temper some expectations afterwards. They did actually give some additional free things later on, which was supposed to have been part of another sort of concert thing that they were kind of running. But instead of doing it as a bundle package that you'd have to pay for, they kind of gave it free over a week or so as part of the anniversary. But that was kind of a damage control, if anything, which kind of stems.
Yeah, sounds like too little, too late sort of scenario.
Yeah,
really,
and I don't know. I think I've also had that kind of period of. I've actually stopped playing Genshin quite a bit now recently. So I've only played it maybe once a week in more recent days. I mean, back when I was playing it properly, it was literally every day. Because there was daily rewards, you'd have to log in and go and do stuff just to keep up with the sort of free content. But yeah, I've kind of given up on that stuff. And then behind the scenes, even after that, they've been doing patches, they've been doing releases. Some bits have been successful, some bits have been quite good. But then I think there's now another lull period. And then this thing I kind of added on in the title. It's known as the KFC wings. So what happened was that they did a collab in China, and they've done this with kind of quite a few other games, where the game essentially collabs with KFC. It's part of a KFC bucket bundle, and you'd have all the sort of characters on the bucket. You'd get a code on the lid to go and download some. This was the KFC wings, so you get these wings that allow you to glide. And what happened was this was really successful in China. And this was really early. This feels like 6 months ago, if not earlier. And what would happen is that there'd be people queuing up to get these KFC buckets. On release day, I think there were these pictures and videos of, kind of like Deliveroo drivers with like 10 buckets trying to balance on a scooter.
It's like a game release day where people are queuing up for a game release, but it's actually for KFC buckets.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the worst things I heard was like either people camping overnight to get to the front of the queue to get to the KFC, or literally be in the queue for 5 hours just to go and purchase the bucket to get the code.
And Al, what was the reason for you to stop playing? Were you almost like looking for an excuse to not to, and this gave it to you, or were you actually I think, really miffed by what they've done, whether they're overstretching and being greedy? Or...
yeah, I think it was a combination of that kind of things. Is that I've also been playing another kind of similar game. The rewards on it for my time is significantly better, which is why Genshin I'm feeling like I'm not. It's not really giving me that much. It's deliberately doing it to a level where I think it wants you to spend. The only way you can get the things that you want is to spend.
If you get some context around it, Genshin Impact is an absolute commercial success. And I'm going to read numbers that they grossed over $2 billion in the first year of release. And it's a game that, let's say, is $200 million a year to develop.
And that's the thing. I think that's what pisses the players the most. It's such a success. It's like number one in sales across however all the different mobile formats, etc. And they were stingy on anniversary rewards. You're just like, why? Why, guys? And this KFC one, right? Whilst it was in China, it meant the rest of the world couldn't get access to it. So what happened was, more recently, was that they did, for the rest of the globe, they released it as a collab with Twitch. But what would happen is that you needed to subscribe, not using Prime subscription, you'd have to subscribe properly to a Genshin streamer on this collab, and you have to do it twice. So you'd spend £10 or $10, whatever it is, to a Twitch streamer to get the KFC wings. So I think people were expecting to get it for free. So then what happens was that they were up in arms saying, I would much prefer spending on a KFC bucket than spending on a Twitch streamer.
Yeah, I just as I mean, I'm just trying to relate this to my world because I play Destiny probably as much as you play Genshin, right? And they've got an anniversary coming out at Christmas, and they've done the same as what you're sort of calling out with Genshin, where they've just given nothing, right? I think all of these companies they just get too greedy.
Yeah.
And they do it consciously because they know they can get away with it. And sometimes, bad news is still good news.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Because
it just feels like they could have done with the goodwill, right? Like, I mean, that's probably one of the few reasons that I've kind of stopped playing is that they're just too stingy about it. I'm kind of done, really.
Yeah, well, Al, if you keep making $2 billion a year, to hell with goodwill.
Yeah, it's true.
You're giving them that power, not you specifically, but the player base is giving them that power to behave like this. So, obviously, I've always said, like, companies are not for us. As in, they're not for us. They're for the P&L and the bottom line and the balance sheet.
But it's a balance, though, isn't it? Because I think what Al is saying is that they could enhance their P&L or have continuity on the P&L or profit, or I say, if they get the balance right. And the type of people that play RPGs are normally people who are reasonably switched on. They're not like your dumb people that play FIFA or of Call of Duty. You can't really pull the wool over people's eyes. Yes, there'll be a subset, but generally, people who like play those kind of games, it's a lot of time investment. You've got to understand deep mechanics. You've got to understand the bigger picture. Your brain works in a certain way. So you see a company coming a mile away if they're trying to shaft you.
Yeah.
But does your brain work in a way in which you say, "I'll stop playing"?
Well, that's what I've done with Genshin.
No, that's
the thing, isn't it? That's the problem, isn't it?
I mean, they know that as well. Yeah.
So,
and Destiny's the same, where I've paid for a year pass and 4 seasons last year, and because of COVID, they're only giving us 3 seasons, and then the 4th season is an anniversary pass, and you've got to pay for it. and everyone's going to pay for it because they're throwing in a dungeon, and that dungeon in Destiny is reasonably like solid piece of content, and everyone's kind of content poor, but they packaged it with the next year's DLC to get the best price. So they've kind of like look here, but here, and then slipped it in there when you're not even looking.
but that's the thing. I've like okay, so with Genshin, and you're right, Jay. It's about that kind of retention of the P&L, because I've literally not spent a penny on it since that debacle. I've literally not spent anything. I've been watching the KFC one happen more recently. I was like, that's just another example of them being being greedy about it. You could argue supporting a smaller Twitch streamer is a good thing for the Twitch streamer, but even so, it's just like one of those things they could have done again on goodwill.
Balance is key to any of this. Balance is really, really key. But is there also an element of gamers being very entitled?
Yeah, but that was the review bombing angle, right? Should they really expect this from a company that should be making money? I don't know. It's a difficult one.
It's a hard one. It's always balanced, but I mean, it's this company is basically investing hundreds of millions a year to develop this game, run this game operationally, as well as change it and patch it and produce new content. And then it's a free-to-play, right?
Yep.
It's kind of a free-to-play, so... But obviously they're microtransactions of some sort. Okay, so they're making their money that way. And then, on the other hand, because of all that's happening, the player's expecting kind of like free content, almost, giveaways. Which is not really unreasonable.
Especially with
but is it rational though? I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
To me,
based on everything that
that's because I've spent a decent amount on it as well. I'm thinking, like, come on, you've got to do something to keep me going on this. Like, there's just nothing really. So I don't know.
I'm on the camp that kind of says the balance must be maintained. Given they earn the money they're earning, they should have pushed out something that was free. Yeah. something that was free. But equally, there's nothing in a contract saying they got to do that.
No, exactly. And this is why it was interesting when I switched over to, I guess, and I was playing it in parallel, Punishing Grey Raven. That one, the rewards on it are so much better. And I'm probably been lucky that my brother's kind of shown me towards that, and I'm still happy with that one. I'm still playing that quite regularly.
Yes, I don't know what to think. If you know what I mean. On the one hand, I'm thinking, you know, you kind of evil, scrupulous kind of like corporate entity, you. And on the other hand, I'm thinking, you idiot gamer. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I don't know what to think. It's kind of probably... like has to be somewhere in the middle, surely. I mean, but I just.
How does a game work? Is it mostly the environments and maps stay the same, but they add more
it's
moves and magic and loot, or
characters and kind of equipment sets and weapons and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, right. Because the cosmetic stuff, in my eyes, is the easiest stuff for them to make. It doesn't cost them that much, right? So you know. My view is that they could have given some cosmetic stuff free at the same time, have a celebration, and have some characters released at the same time. It's the best of both worlds, right?
Just some simple things.
Did they even
celebrating?
Did they even celebrate the game? Did they even celebrate the game?
They had these. Well, this was the thing. These contests, these anniversary contests, where certain people could go and win stuff. But then it's kind of a dirty tactic, right? It's getting the fan base. It's getting the people to do all the work, to advertise, to do almost all the marketing and social media stuff, and only to get poxy rewards.
By all means, let the community kind of like be your cheerleaders, but you know, give them something back. I mean, I talk about Warframe as almost as much as Jay talks about Destiny, right? But in Warframe, in terms of cosmetics, they've got almost an internal economy with that thing, where you have the players designing actually cosmetics in costumes, or if you want to call them that, for the actual Warframes. But I think the players get rewarded for that.
Yeah. They'll get recognition. They'll get a cut. It's the same like Valve did with was it Team Fortress, and I don't think they did it for Counter-Strike, but they definitely did it for Team Fortress, where you can kind of craft and create items and sell it on it, and then you get a cut. Of the item.
That's right.
And actually Dota did that too. If you had a submitted cosmetic set that was then eventually on a treasure chest selection, then you'd get royalties, essentially a cut of the sales that go towards it.
I mean, go ahead, Jay.
I was going to say, I was just watching a video yesterday as I'm looking at cryptos and NFTs and NFT gaming. That there's a really popular game called Axie Infinity, which is the most popular NFT game, and they've got it's kind of like a Pokemon kind of game, and someone described it as like a Pokemon with a Tamagotchi.
Interesting.
Mixed together. So you've got like a breeding element to it, right? And then you got battles. But I was watching a video, and they've created jobs for people in the real world where they do breeding in the game, and they live off that. I can't remember which country it was, but it wasn't a very affluent country, and people actually were able to feed their families, and they've built an economy around that. And I think that's where a lot of these games are heading, because they get that's the way to fix it, isn't it? It's to have an economy where it helps everybody. People want to just jump in, not hardcore, free to play. You want a bit more, buy some cosmetics and DLC.
Correct.
You want to turn it into a job? You make money off it. Here you go, right?
Yeah. It's a perpetual world.
Yeah, and
so why not have an economy?
If you can sustain it like that, then it's almost like self-sufficient off the back of that, right? Yeah.
That's right. And you're making somebody happy.
Yes.
And some of the haters will disappear overnight. You know what I mean? So why not?
Exactly. And interesting what you're saying about a Warframe. You're saying they've got a UI where it allows the community to create cosmetics?
I'm not sure. I don't think it's a UI.
They're probably like a workshop tool or something that they can... Yeah,
something. But I just...
Like a modder.
Like
the end game. The end game of Warframe has been coined fashion frame. Because it's obviously the characters are highly customizable. So, but yeah, but they're churning out new kind of costumes and items all the time. So you have the community kind of contributing to that. And as I understand it, they were kind of like making something out of it, as well. It's kind of weird, for kind of Genshin, right? That I mean, Genshin, it's kind of like Zelda Wind Waker,
Yep.
as much as I understand it.
Zelda Wind Waker with more characters, more weapons,
Yeah.
more kind of sets, I guess, elemental sets.
Yeah, I mean, did they even allow, let's say, the community to design their own character?
No, not really. Not really.
Wow, that's so boring.
Yeah, but that's
You
what I
know
mean.
what I mean?
That's why it's kind of a weird one, and they've done all this strange getting people to share stuff on Facebook, Twitter,
Right.
do art contests on it, and all that sort of stuff. Which is
In a way, I can understand the hate because it's the anniversary, and what we're gonna do for you
Get you to
is
do some
we are
work.
gonna allow you, yeah, we're gonna allow you to be another kind of part of our marketing machine. You will basically market our game for
Oh,
us.
I
How about
completely
that?
forgot. There
Thank
was a
you.
good part as well because it was an art contest. There was a lot of pictures
Yeah.
that basically just had a middle finger.
Do you think they're going to recover from this?
I
Alf?
think they will. Based on what I'm seeing in terms of content wise, there's basically lots of people are skipping the middle bit. There's droughts. I suspect their revenue numbers would slowly decline unless they do something to improve that kind of cycle.
I think that's the only way they're gonna really kind of be pushed into action almost.
Yeah.
They can see a visible blip in the numbers like that. But it's kind of sad to see that, if you know what I mean. It's just like
Exactly.
speaks to
Yeah.
a very unethical organisation almost. It's just I mean, look, you don't expect big companies who are making that sort of money just to hand out dosh
Hmm.
and say, here you go, you know. But it's kind of like, do you have to be such a blatant, you have to be so blatantly greedy at the same time? I mean, are you gonna even pretend that you're not?
Yeah, but I don't know. It's also because I guess maybe there's also a difference. I think in the reactions that you get from the global player base versus the China player base. I guess
Yeah, maybe so.
the ones you get in China are that's where most of their money is being made. Actually, it's the players in China, not the global side. But I think it's the global side that can see these tactics and just saying, no, this is not. This is
I
not
suspect
great.
that the community outside of China are a little bit more vocal as well.
Hmm.
They let it be known that they're dissatisfied quite quickly. I
Yeah.
feel.
There was once where the China Genshin kind of player base were up in arms, but that was based on a character's power level. Basically, they thought it was underwhelming, and I think they were saying also that they felt duped because when they were demoing it, it was much more powerful than it is now. So they said that they've nerfed him. They wanted a buff. And actually, they quickly did react and actually buffed the character. But then people were up in arms saying, well, I didn't get the character because it was underwhelming, and now you've buffed it, and can't even get to it. It's like-
I mean,
No, you can't.
yeah, nightmare.
that stuff is fine. It's very hard to balance these complex games, right? Complex systems, complex games, too many audiences. But coming back to the original theme of the discussion, I hope they learn from it because it's clearly a wrong and bad move, right?
Yeah, but I just...
I'd like to see if
Many
they did.
people have made before wrong.
Yeah, I'd like to see if they did learn anything from this. So it sounds like they tried to appease some of the fans. It's just kind of like what they're gonna do next because it's a lot of these games as a service need to be sustainable more than anything. So it's just kind of like is it gonna adjust the culture of the organisation? Is there going to be a bit of a change here?
Yeah, I don't know, probably less so. I think they probably look after their employees. They look after the people that are actually doing the work for them. It's just their player base. They don't seem to be quite as...
Oh, that's the
looking
other
after.
side of it.
Yeah.
There's a very important part of your ecosystem. There's no two ways about it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You
Yep.
have to feed the beast, don't you?
You give it just enough.
Feed it. We've nourished that beast.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say something on that. I again, I can only speak from my experience with Destiny, because it's probably a game I haven't played in this sphere as much. But what they've done, they've lowered the expectations of the customer base to a sustainable level for their internal teams, but also the beast is, when it's being overfed, it just wants more and
Correct.
more and more.
That's also correct.
It doesn't get overfed and like, well, okay, I'm full for a bit and I want to take a break. It just wants to keep on eating, and that's not sustainable, is it? So
it's pure gluttony.
Yeah, exactly. So and to be honest, when you, like with anything, you have the balance. You tend to enjoy it more, and having a break from a game is healthy for the player base, the company, and everybody as well. And it sounds like Genshin's going to, and this is one example, but this is all normal growing pains of this type of RPG game, isn't it? It's just that Diablo's probably gone through many times before and probably written the rule book. But it's interesting to see. I find I struggle because there's so much history in these type of games. I struggle to see that these guys don't consciously make these moves to either purposefully create a bit of a dip, so then we got content coming. It will make it the ramp up seem even better, or we want to lower their expectations purposely because we want to, I don't know, have the bandwidth, let the players go, lower the expectation. We've got another game coming out. I really believe with these companies making this much money that they're not that disconnected from what the customer really wants.
Psychologically, they know how the customer reacts and behaves, I feel, and I equally think that it's probably, people who are listening to this, they'd probably hate it, but it's probably smart to basically let some of your kind of player base moan. Let the negativity wash over you for a little bit. But then, after that's happened, you come in like a knight in shining armor. And then that has an effect of, number one, right? You seem like a good Samaritan. You come across, I'm listening to the fans now.
Yep.
Yeah? And then, everybody's kind of like washing away, what happened before, because finally we're being listened to. I sound very kind of,
it's a good tactic.
Conspiracy
theory
kind of like.
I think you're right. You're 100% right. The first topic that we talked about, which was Halo, they delayed the game. They got ripped. The brand took a dive. Now that the game's multiplayer bit is good, they're like heroes.
Correct.
They made the right decision for the gamer.
Correct. People have got short memories. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's only what's important to them right now.
Exactly.
And they'll fix that battle pass for you.
They'll fix that. I'm sure. They've probably got plans to fix it. You know what I mean? They've got a roadmap of fixes.
Exactly. Yeah.
As long as it's not as big as Cyberpunk's.
Yeah, probably not. That's almost kind of like a little bit unfixable.
It's a roadmap to nowhere.
Okay, guys. With all that said, and us giving Genshin a bit of an impact as well, if you like. Okay, I think it's time to move on to our next topic. So guys, the next topic we want to get into is basically China locking down gaming for 16-year-olds. Which is something I never thought I'd ever see, but it's happened, and I think quite a big step really, and quite a play. I mean, politically, obviously, quite a power play, definitely. But I mean, I just want to get your thoughts on it. I mean, is it a good thing, bad thing? Why do you think it's really come about?
Yeah, and just to be clear on it, I think it was what was it? Is limited to like, is it 1 hour a week or something? 1 hour a week?
It's 3 hours. It's 3 hours I think a week when I looked it up. But 3 hours a week for gaming is pretty much next to nothing. That's the reality.
That's no RPGs then.
Yeah, no RPGs. Yeah, definitely no RPGs.
Only Halo.
Yeah, probably only casual games or something like that. Yeah. So, guys, I just
Yeah.
wanted to get your thoughts on it. I mean, like, is this something that could happen in the West? Let's say.
No chance. It's
Yeah. Yeah, go on, Jay. You go first.
oh, I could I could talk ages on this topic, but just the headlines for me is it makes sense for China, and the way that China wants to run this country is up to them, and I think it's fine, right? If you take a Western view, it's like, whoa, that's bad, and I don't want
Yep.
that to happen in the Western part of the world. I don't think it will, or it won't anytime soon. I think it is healthy for kids, especially when you're under 16. It makes sense, right? Because you're not in control of your mind when you were at that sort of age. And the other element, just very quickly, we can speak a bit about this in a bit more detail. Is from what I understand is that the games people play, the algorithms and the code is dictating Western behaviours.
Hmm.
And I think that's where they're fundamentally worried about, because that's not in line with what they want to do, and it's part of a bigger narrative. What I understand of the battle of the algorithms, how they run their social media, and how the algorithms that support their e-commerce platforms and whatnot, and their news is part of that. Where does China want to take their organization, country? Sorry, and yeah, I don't like it, but I understand why they're doing it, and I don't want it.
Hmm.
That's kind of where I'm at with
Yeah.
it.
I mean, I think I agree with your kind of views around it. It happening in the West, very unlikely based on combination of freedom type angles around it. Would you go? You could argue, is it protection around game addiction? Then maybe, but would you go as full draconian as 3 hours a week? That sounds pretty. That sounds massive. In terms of how limited that is for a child to kind of go and play. And it does make you then wonder, because what it will do is there's no chance of getting like a Fortnite, champion out of China. There's no chance of them playing those sorts of games and building the ability to get to those kind of very high levels. Like I just think like Dota, no chance. They're never going to have the good teams and champions again
I think
if
that
they keep yeah.
only matter if esports became kind of fully in the public eye, and one day
Mm-hmm.
it made its way into the Olympics.
Mm,
I'm not sure it's a factor right now.
It'll get there, won't
yeah.
it? I think it will get to the Olympics.
At some point,
It will
at
at
some
some
point,
point.
you could see it.
Do
Yeah, there's
you,
already really big money in the esports.
It's really audience though, really more than money. It's
Mm,
all
mm,
the audiences get big enough, then why not?
if you think about where China is in terms of its economy and the type of workers it needs, the last thing it needs is people that are addicted to games, and dare I say it, using their brain. Correct me if I'm wrong, and this might be ignorant, but the more it's more the mass population for working factories and producing products. That's where it's at. But it's fast, rapidly growing out of that, and I can imagine the next 50
mm.
years they'll have more knowledge workers, and strategic thinkers, and flying to the other side of the moon, latest gadgets. The AI must be mind blowing, but we
Mm.
can't see. Um,
Yeah,
and that's
and they are spending lots and lots of money in those kind of spaces. Although they are, I think I was mentioning to yourselves kind of offline a bit around this sort of stuff, but they're still suffering from some of the growth pains of their own area. The latest gadgets, property issues and all sorts of things. We've seen Evergrande, that's been on the news, still hasn't finished. They do have growing issues that are in there.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. But is this whole ban thing? Is it is it China trying to look after their youth, or is it China trying to exert control?
Hmm.
And maybe not over the youth. Maybe they're trying to exert control over the businesses that produce the games.
how many countries really care about their population? if you look at and this is going outside of the gaming sphere, but from what I understand and what I've read, and as I get older and learn more, it's about keeping the rich rich and the poor poor. And there are countries where just take Europe and large parts of Europe and the UK and America and just an example, or Canada, whatever it may be, or Australia. Those sort of countries do care about their people more, and I think that there's a much better balance.
Mm.
Again, you guys probably have a better view on this, but I don't think China really cares about its people in the same way that India doesn't really either, because there's just too many people anyway.
Yeah, I think it's trying to show a perception that it does, and I think it's already happened. Things like, and it's getting very political in this particular podcast, but stuff like the one child policy that they instigated, they've reversed that now, and they're now trying to push families to go and have free kids or something. I think is the policy that they're trying to push for, and trying to do incentives around
Population's
it.
getting too old, perhaps.
Yeah, it's already been too late. They've already hemorrhaged the population to a point where, well, actually it's even worse, is that because of the one child policy, males were preferred over females. And what happens is you've also, because whilst reducing the population, you've also skewed the population. So actually, if you will now want free childs, you can't. You just can't do that. You can't fix that. That's going to take another 2 decades.
You have to
be able to
let
fix that
nature
problem.
take its course.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
India and China, out of all the countries, they've got the biggest problem, and probably Africa as well, where it's seen as having a son, bringing in money is the better chance of survival, and all the behaviours are dictated around that, and it's skewed that way. And I think this gaming thing is in that sphere, isn't it? If they said if there was the guidance is 3 hours, and the education system was built around that, and marketing, advertising, and the propaganda around it, but to say ban 3 hours, like we're banning crypto's banned. People are still doing it. They've banned, unbanned, banned, unbanned. They're currently banned crypto. They're going to unban it again. And they're going to unban this gaming thing. So I wonder whether there's a short-term issue that they're trying to remedy this versus actually being a long-term strategic.
Yeah, I do wonder, because a lot of the gaming companies in China are massive. All the big ones seem to be multi-billion dollar corporations.
Yep.
And I do sometimes hear that China likes to make or flex its muscles, basically, in some of the big corporations they have in the country. Like Alibaba is a case in point.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of wondering if this is the Chinese government trying to flex their muscles in saying, as big as you are, if I say jump, you're not just going to jump. You're going to do the high jump or the pole vault for me, if you know what I mean. It's just that sort of thing. And that's one thing. The other thing I sometimes think is that this whole 16-year-old should only play 3 hours worth of games. Yeah, it's almost like, my parents or grandparents talking at the time, where they just kind of like say, get to your books, start studying, do all that kind of stuff.
Playing that game.
way back. It's all of that sort of thing, old-fashioned thinking. I almost wonder if it's just kind of like harking back to that sort of mentality, if you know what I mean.
I think it is. I think it is part of that as well. When they don't recognise the plus sides on the other end of it, so they've just taken the extreme angle of just clamping it down as best as they can, in the manner that China knows best.
Is this a kind of Genshin? Give the community.
I don't think it's a reaction to Genshin specifically.
And then we'll bring it up. Halo, Battle Pass, give them nothing, and then we'll work it back up. Do you think they're starting with a hard?
Well, I think I think organically that will happen anyway. I mean, I literally think organically that could happen anyway. It won't be necessarily something they don't need to plan, if you know what I mean. They'll kind of do this for a short term, get what they need out of the situation, and then release it somewhat.
The other thing I just wanted to just to run by you guys. So certainly in a lot of the Western countries, and probably most countries anyway, consumption keeps the economy going. It creates the growth, assets go up, we build more infrastructure, quality of life improves. It's all kind of the pyramid scheme of life, you could say, Ponzi scheme of life. Kind of
Capitalism.
it is capitalism, yeah. And how I don't know enough about China, but given they create a lot of the products around the world, does that sustain their economy enough, or do they also internally rely on consumption? Because gaming is massive, right? So their population is massive. I wonder how much this will impact their economy and whether it.
Well, I think the under-16s, and if you think of an under-16 even in the Western world, their disposable income should be a lot less. So the impact economy-wise probably is less so. But the impact to, I guess, it's the individual, the child, is going to be different, right? I guess they would try and get them to focus on school stuff, studying, all those sort of classic type things that they would try and get you to do. But what they've forgotten is that these players that are no longer playing will no longer be able to grow up to be Dota champions, Fortnite champions, anything like that.
But who cares about that, Al? Who cares?
That's the thing.
Yeah, no one cares about that stuff. We like it, we admire it, but
I don't
no
think
one in China gives.
I don't think the Chinese Communist Party will care one iota about Dota being a Dota champion or somehow. You know what I mean?
If it goes to the Olympics, I don't know.
No, I get it. That's when it gets on a bit of kudos. I mean, that's when it gets the kudos, right? I mean, but right now, I don't think it factors into the thinking.
100% not. Yeah.
To me, right, if the Chinese government were doing this for backwards, old-fashioned reasons, in that, you're under 16, school, study, I'd actually respect that a little bit more. Yeah. But in the back of my mind, I don't think this is what it's all about. I think it's more about control. Obviously,
Yeah, because the system that the game companies have to employ is literally some kind of ID check.
Yeah.
To work out that you're actually above the right age to go and play.
Really?
Yeah. They're forcing it.
Interesting.
This is where I think the free-to-play model. I don't know what type of games they play, but the free-to-play model drives more addiction, and you could argue sometimes lack of less quality over whatever certain period. And I wonder whether that's the real problem for the youth, because they're not able to. It's the loot boxes. It's the barriers to entry are low, and there's just too many games. I think that is really the problem, isn't it? And they're fixing it at the other end of the wrong end, I think. Because you ban anything, people desire it more. Maybe that's the Western view of things, because in fact, it will be this way. These guys will
in China, it is. Yeah, it's you were saying earlier about kind of a producing country, but it's becoming more and more a consumer-led country.
Yeah, that's where they want to be, right? It's just interesting. I heard on a podcast a long time ago. We think of China as a full-on dictatorship. But this guy was explaining, he was someone from America, his wife was from China. He said it's actually not, it's actually a hybrid. It's a dictatorship at a national level, and there's a 50-year, 100-year plan for the country, which is actually pretty amazing, because we don't seem to have that in the West. It's like a 3-year cycle, right? But at more locally, there is you have a bit more of a say as a society about autonomy about what you want, and it's not as extreme as the media makes out. And I wonder how much the ban thing is being. It's a ban, but they're not telling the rest of the narrative of the story, or how it's been presented to people. We just hear it in the news as the ban. Wow, ban! Here we go. Here China goes again. And I as I've been looking more into the crypto space, and FUD is this big thing, right? Fear, uncertainty, and I forgot what the D stands for now, but doubt. Sorry, that was it. I wonder how much this story is presented in without the rest of the chicken KFC wings on it, so you don't know the full story. I had to weave it in there somehow.
I mean, being positive, you'd like to think the Chinese government were being kind of like for the people, as it were,
For the greater good.
for the greater good. But we're all from the West, obviously, and like any limits on control, restrictions, or censorship for us would be just unacceptable, almost. At least let's vote on it, if you know what I mean. You know?
Yeah, it's true. If you look at maybe not, few hundred years ago, or 500 years, or 1,000 years ago, or even prior to that, having a dictatorship kind of society probably worked then, but for that China to be the best in a lot of industries or pushing boundaries, there can't be a full-on dictatorship as it's been portrayed to us. Yeah,
they're not.
Yeah,
They've demonstrated not. They've been very kind of smart and savvy and clever. They understand their people more than we think they do.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, they do. And they've obviously given, the people some of what they want. Yeah, because who doesn't want to make money? Who doesn't want to get travel? Who doesn't want to do more their life? Who doesn't want that?
quality of life. Yeah, even the government's not that stupid that if let's say every Chinese citizen had the best quality of life out of every nation on the planet, that's a whether you're evil or good, it's where you would want to be, right?
Correct.
And just coming back to what I was saying, I think it sounds like you're agreeing as well. I don't think we're getting the full story, but from what story that we're hearing, we don't want it, and I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't last for too long. And even double that, 6 hours a week. That's enough for a child.
Yes.
That is more than enough for a child for a week anyway. So 3 is probably a bit on the stingy side.
Yeah.
Is it 3 and you can't, if you don't use the 3 in the week, it doesn't carry over to the next week?
Yeah, I don't think it'll work like that. Like, we'd like it to, but I'm not sure that'll happen. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting situation. I mean, like, it kind of demonstrates the contrast between this communist country in the West, because clearly, we wouldn't want to tolerate such a thing, and as a consequence of what we're hearing, right, we're building up almost all of these. What I'll call, like conspiracy scenarios. It's just about control. They're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. Like,
makes you more
all that may
with what
be
we've
true.
got, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Narrative, yeah.
And all of that may be true, but obviously there's a positive side effect to all of this, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Chinese government wanted to flex their muscles in terms of demonstrating to the gaming organisations in that country who's actually boss. Yeah, but maybe they are kind of reflecting upon where they want their youth to be as well. That isn't actually for me so difficult to believe because of some of the values of the culture and all that kind of sort of thing. I could actually believe that. Yeah, I could actually believe that.
What's the implication? Let's say if it does in China does persist, 3 hours. What's the implication on us in the Western world? Like, as an example, will the number of users go down for certain games? The price for us will go up.
For me, I don't feel that it's about. I don't think the problem for me would be about whether cost for a game would go up or down or anything along those lines. And I honestly think that it would probably have to remain status quo. I don't think they can necessarily afford to basically do something like that. You get a raft of players just leaving a game.
I mean, if anything, there's probably there may be less games developed for that audience, maybe, but it's like really, it's quite niche as well. Maybe if you go aim for the sort of Chinese youth.
Yeah, but the dangers I would see is that we wouldn't want it in the countries that we live in. But you'll get certain pockets of people who have never ever liked computer games, who have it in for computer games because it's a tool of the devil, whatever it may be,
My mum.
Yeah, effectively our parents. Like, the tool of the devil. Why are you playing this thing? What are you doing? And I think if it worked in China, right, you'll get these pockets of people really kind of getting quite noisy, And whilst I don't truly believe it would ever happen in the West, the reality is it could make it a little bit more difficult, right? And then at minimum you'll get this noisy bunch of people kind of like putting negative things about gaming in the news again,
Mm.
which quite frankly, I think I'm quite bored with. You know what I mean? But
I'm done with that as well. But
yeah,
there is gaming can be addictive, and I think there's a spectrum of games, particularly the way they're constructed, not the actual gameplay, but like loot boxes in FIFA, the way it's structured, and some RPGs. I want some of that got rid of, and it sounds like FIFA have like taken the Mickey to the point that it's going to lead to some of those changes. And on that thread, I can see the justification what China's doing. And I think that rebalancing is going to happen, and I think that's needed for gaming because it gives it a bad name.
yes, yeah, I agree.
And I think I'm hoping that will happen, and that will hopefully because I think the pendulum. If it did take China away for a second, right? What's happening there, and the Western games, the games that we like to play, the pendulum is not in the right place. Where there's a focus on the craftsmanship, quality experience, it is focused too much on microtransactions, DLCs, over-promising, releasing too early. There's too many dud games coming out at the moment, and the lack of single-player quality, narrative-driven experience that's shorter. There's something in that space that I think needs rebalancing. We can talk about it on another podcast, but it's interesting. I really like this topic because I think that, the China ban with the kids, that's not the first of it. There'll be more bans elsewhere, but I think we've had a fairly balanced view that knowing the intent behind it and what else is going on is where you really understand if it's good or bad.
Yeah, of course. Of course, it's the intent. You can do something, and you can always kind of like manipulate it to your advantage, no matter what's said. And only time will tell. I feel, I mean, I don't want it to come to the West because I mean I'm not for censorship, and I'm a parent now, and equally, I don't think we should give people a free ride. If you're gonna, if it's about the children, we're gonna say that. Who are truly responsible for the children? The parents are responsible for the children. Don't cop out here with me. You know what I mean? Not the teachers, not the schools. You are responsible. Yeah?
And behind that, it's banning never works. It's about education
Correct.
and understanding. That's where the
Correct.
sustainable part of it is. And
Correct.
if it's not gaming in China or not in China, if there's no education, they'll get addicted to something else. Alcohol,
Yeah. Yeah.
or other types of drugs, or you get addicted to reading books.
Correct. And we've always had this kind of the enemy of society. And back in the 80s, it was television and films and the video nasty. If you remember those things, you know what I mean? Like, we've always had this thing. There's always had to be an enemy that people need to basically point out. This is what's the worst thing in our society. But you know what? Stop it. The worst thing in society is the way people behave, the way they conduct themselves. Yeah, I know.
My dad wanted to snap my skateboard when he found out I got one. He used to jump over fences and skate in car parks. There's always something, isn't there?
There's always something.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, guys. With that, I think quite deep and interesting, and I think quite enjoyable conversation. I think it's really time to move to our next topic. So Al, what I want to get into next is really Intel and
Mhm.
really Intel Alderlake.
Yeah.
So what I've titled for this one is Intel Rekindles Competition. Yeah, so they've now released their, I think it's 12th gen consumer CPUs.
Yeah.
Okay, they've got 6 SKUs straight off the bat, both K and KF variants of the i9, i7, and i5.
Mm.
So 12900K, 12700K, and 12600K. And the
Mhm.
KF
Mhm.
variants have, no integrated GPU, so no integrated graphics, and that integrated GPU is the XELP UHD Graphics 770. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, as we know, these all the like CPUs have E cores, P cores, where the P cores have multi threading, i.e., kind of SMT. The E cores, or these efficiency cores, are comparable to Skylake CPUs. So the
Mhm.
215 6th gen, I think that's the something like the i7 6700K, for instance.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, if I go through the core layout of the i9, i7, and i5, and Al, get a pillow ready because there's a lot of information here. Right, so the i9 12900K has 8 P cores, 8 cores, 24 threads.
Mhm.
Yeah, it has E cores clocked at 2400 at base, 3900 at turbo,
Mhm.
and with the P cores, 3200 at base, 5200 at turbo.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm. Yeah.
and a base power consumption of 125 and a turbo power consumption of 241 watts.
Mhm. Mhm.
MSRP being 589. And just to clarify that Intel are not using they're not using TDP any longer. They've
Mhm.
now kind of
Mhm.
split that out and using base power and turbo power
Mhm. Mhm.
as the indicators.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Now the i7 12700K, 8 P cores, 4 E cores, yeah,
Mhm.
20 threads,
Yeah.
2700 for the E core base, 3800 for the E core turbo. For the P cores, 3600 for the base, 5000 for the turbo.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
base power 125 watts, the turbo 190 watts, with
Mhm.
a MSRP of $409.
Mhm.
Okay. The i5 12600K, 6 P cores plus 4 E cores, a total of 16 threads,
Mhm. Mhm.
2800 for the E core base clock,
Mhm.
3600 for the E core turbo clock. For the
Mhm.
P cores, 3700 GHz for the base
Yeah.
and 4900 for D turbo,
Mhm. Mhm.
with a base power consumption of 125 and a turbo power consumption of 150, and the MSRP $289.
Mhm.
Okay, $289. So, what else can we say about them? Well, they support PCI 5.0 and DDR5.
Mhm.
However, motherboards will only support either DDR5 or DDR4, not both.
Yeah.
You have to choose which type of memory you're going to go for.
Yeah.
The P cores are 28% better than, let's say, a core in 10th gen Comet Lake. The E cores are 1% better than a core in 10th gen Comet Lake.
Mhm. Mhm.
But what that really means, it's 19% better than last gen, the 11900K.
Yeah.
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 And, again, 10th gen is like the 10900K, 10700K. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, looking at the pricing, the i9 12900K versus, let's say, an R9 5900X from AMD is slightly more expensive by, let's
Mhm.
say, $40. Yeah.
Yeah.
The i7 12700K vs the R7 5800X is less expensive by $40. And the
Mhm.
i5 12600K vs the R5 5600X, what a mouthful,
Mm.
is less expensive by about $10.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's MSRP.
Obviously, it's MSRP, so obviously might mean nothing at all, but it gives us some sort of indicator. Yeah, straight off the bat.
Yeah.
And these guys also use a new chipset, Z690, 690, yeah, which obviously means new motherboards. Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll need new motherboards to run these guys.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So again, very competitive. Very competitive. Definitely a step up. Definitely a step up. Now, the thread director, which we discussed in other podcasts, obviously now we know that feeds the Windows scheduler. Now, this thing apparently monitors instructions at a nanosecond level and communicates with the OS on a microsecond level. Yeah. And the thread director has, let's say, a full view of the whole processor. And really what it does is it has a view of what instructions are running, what runs where, and what is important. And it uses thermals, power settings, and identifies which threads need to be moved up or down based on priority and also weighing up against competing processes. Yeah. Now, it can adjust its recommendations based on frequency, power, and thermals. But, to be clear, it doesn't use any sort of machine learning, but it uses a pre-canned or a pre-trained algorithm to work out what it's doing.
Probably based on the executable in some way, I imagine.
Well, it actually has no understanding of what thread is connected to what program. So it doesn't do it at that level.
Interesting. Okay.
It's if you like, it's program agnostic, but it focuses more on the kind of lower level instructions that are being executed. Yeah, this is what I understood. And I read something on Anantech, and this may or may not be true, that, let's say, a window you have up on the OS might actually get priority on P calls. It's something to consider. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And moving on to that, connected, obviously, Windows Scheduler. Yeah. This is obviously making all the decisions using info from the thread director. Windows 10 focuses more on the power of certain calls, whereas Windows 11 extends this scheduler to consider efficiency as well, which kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Windows 10 considers E cores as lower performance than P cores. Yeah. But it doesn't know how well each core does at a given frequency with a workload, whereas Windows 11 does. Yeah. However, what I've kind of seen, from the reviews and the commentary around the internet is that doesn't seem to be a massive advantage using Windows 11. For nothing that's been kind of, let's say, communicated or observed from what I can see.
Yeah, from and I think I've watched maybe one video on Alderlake performance. And it's interesting between Windows 10 and 11, but I think in general 10 was still slightly quicker. At least that's what I was thinking.
For certain things and for certain programs, I think people have made that observation. But whether that's because it's anything to do with Windows 10 or whether it's to do with the thread director Windows 11 needing a bit of, let's say, patching or improvement, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. But I think the summary we have here is that Alderlake has definite better single-threaded performance versus the AMD chips, and obviously versus the last gen Intel products. But this seems to basically translate to a 10% advantage for Alderlake. It's kind of taken on an average. It doesn't really blow the AMD chips out of the water. Doesn't blow the Zen 3 architecture out of the water. But clearly, Alderlake wins in gaming, for the majority of cases. But not all games. Equally, not all games. Yeah.
Anything that's optimized, I think, is the key.
Also very true. Alderlake clearly is the more future-proof platform because it will support DDR5, PCIe 5. However, obviously, with the memory side of things, it's DDR5 or DDR4, and not both. You'll need a different, motherboard for that, let's say. However, right now, I don't think there's a huge advantage in having DDR5. It's also expensive, comparably.
And I think I saw something quite funny on the reviews that I did, well, at least I looked at, and there was stuff like they were experimenting by disabling the E cores. And I think they found that the performance of the P cores were actually it was actually better as a result of disabling the E-cores.
Might be latent,
Or at least,
might be latency.
yeah,
Into
rather than have the switch between the two different types of cores.
into core communication and all that sort of thing. That's quite interesting. I mean, it does actually highlight what the E-cores are actually primarily for, if you know what I mean. Whether you basically should go the route that AMD have gone and just have, let's say, a homogeneous set of cores, yeah, yeah, or go the way of Intel. Don't know.
Yeah.
You have to wonder about that. What I will say about the feature set also is that PCIe 5 is good, yeah, and it still will support PCIe 4, yeah.
Yeah.
However, as we know, PCIe 4, the actual peripherals and the support for it is obviously ramping up now. We're seeing lots more SSDs for it. Graphics cards still don't saturate PCIe, 4. So again, whilst it's future proof, you have to kind of you have to think, why, yeah,
Yeah.
why now, is there any value in AMD or Intel going down this route right now? And I'm undecided.
I don't know. Has anyone looked at? I've not really done any research on it, but what about because the other thing with PCIe 4 is that you use it for your SSDs now, especially the fast ones. I don't know if that's coming to a bottleneck on PCIe 4 at all.
I think it's just started to, let's say, the price of drives is getting to a place where it actually can get popular, if you know what I mean. I don't know whether they've kind of started to basically hit a ceiling limit or anything like that. They certainly started to saturate the kind of interface, that's for sure.
I'll do some research for the next one because I bought myself one of those a 2 terabyte one over on the Black Friday sale, so I've got a 2 terabyte one ready to go in.
Exactly. And but again, it's whether really, given that people are starting to move to PCIe 4. They're just starting to do that, who really does need a PCIe 5 drive at the moment, if you know what I mean, because I mean, there are some on the market. I don't know how much they might cost. I haven't I haven't reviewed that side of things, but it's future proofing that specific platform. Yeah. And clearly, from my perspective, if you're building an all new PC, new motherboard, that sort of thing, I think Alderlake is the pot to go for, right now.
Yeah.
However, I will say, if you have an AMD platform, I think it might be actually wise to wait for what AMD does in Q1 2022 or later, potentially later, because there has been talk about AMD Zen 3 Plus. Yeah, that's real. And Zen 3D. Yeah. The Plus, I'm assuming might be just another name for the stuff with 3D cache. Yeah, it might be just a high clocked better bin Zen 3 chip.
Yeah. Do you know if they're using a different chipset or a different
same
socket?
Architecture, but they might be able to clock it up higher. And the other thing with, I think, using this kind of Vcache technology, is that they're talking about a 15% kind of improvement. Yeah, for gamings, they specifically call out gaming when they kind of show the prototype.
Nice.
If that happens, then for gaming, the two things will either become equal, or AMD will have a slight advantage. Again, yeah. And if they can chuck in maybe a clock speed bump up, and again, even for the kind of multi-threading stuff, between the two kind of architectures and two chips, they're actually quite comparable still. Yeah. But obviously, single threaded performance is with Alderlake at the moment. Yeah. But I will say this about Intel: their secret weapon could be actually this thing called Deep Link. And the AI acceleration stuff they showed off, I think it was in the, I don't know, I think it was in the Innovation Day, right? They recently did, yeah, in the Innovation Day. They've got basically AI acceleration in the form of AMX, which is this advanced matrix extension. Now it's not for consumers yet, right? But it's I think it's for the enterprise. But they've noted an 8 times acceleration for intake throughput. Yeah, 8 times using it. Yeah. Now, Deep Link is also very interesting because it allows the iGPU to work with your discrete GPU and CPU to accelerate certain tasks and workloads, which they showed off.
Interesting.
Yeah, which they showed off during the Innovation Day.
Yeah.
So I found that, for me, those sorts of innovations really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's definitely something to look out for. Yeah, and obviously AMD have gone their own way in terms of what their secret sauce is. They've got smart access memory, which is, I guess, is less of a secret sauce for them because everybody's doing it now.
Yeah.
They've got their smart shift stuff and all of that kind of stuff. So basically, the advantage you get if you have an all AMD and Intel have got their advantages, if you've got all Intel, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So basically, excellent news for Intel. Intel are back in it. They're back in the mix. They're back being competitive, and they're now sitting pretty with an architecture that seems to be giving them a springboard. Yeah, for future products. So that's great.
Yeah.
Now, what I'll add to this is that the last AMD event was this AMD data center keynote. So really not really specific to gamers or consumers per se. But a lot of the time, some of the stuff from enterprise will trickle down to consumer.
Yeah.
And the architectures are also very similar. Yeah. So what they showed off was this AMD Instinct M1200 HPC and AI accelerator based on CDNA2. So obviously CDNA2 is the compute version of RDNA for enterprise.
Yeah.
The stats the comparable they gave was for FP64 they can achieve 49.7 teraflops. That's FP64. Yeah. Usually when we talk about GPUs, we're talking about FP, I believe 32. Yeah, it's not 64. That's for sure. Now, compared to Nvidia's product in the same space, that delivers 9.7 teraflops of FP64. Yeah, so that's almost a 5x increase. Yeah, but again, it'd be interesting. Will this ever kind of translate to the consumer? I don't know. But you could imagine, right, if they wanted to include some sort of AI accelerator, you take a compute unit from CDNA2 or something like that. I mean, it's really, a similar. I'm guessing a similar architecture to RDNA2.
Maybe. Well, maybe for cloud compute or something, right? If we ever have proper cloud streaming services, then maybe it's supported by AMD or something.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, obviously, AMD aren't going to cram their graphics card with tensor cores, so they might just kind of give us a kind of CDNA2 core or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Some other interesting things they showed off also. So during the data center keynote, they showed off Milan X based on 7nm, and a Milan X is basically a variant of what they've got for enterprise already, Milan. Yeah, but this thing is something that's in the wild that's going to be using Vcache. Yeah, what we talked about, that 3D cache technology. What they've said is the Vcache is basically delivering 3 times the amount of level 3 cache compared to last generation, 3 times. It goes up to 64 Zen 3 cores, but with Vcache, for certain workloads, they're getting a 50% average uplift in performance just by putting Vcache on it. Yeah. So that could be something we may see. Obviously, not the 50% obviously uplift, but certainly it feels like we could see a boost in performance just by getting some of the existing Zen 3 chips with Vcache. Yeah. And it's not a re-architecture. They're literally just adding a bit of Vcache. Yeah. Extending the size of the level 3 cache. Yeah. Now, what they've got in store in 2022 is also very interesting. So the first thing up is Genoa. So it's a 5nm enterprise chip, 96 Zen 4 cores. So clearly they're upping the amount of cores for next gen. And they've also got Bergamo in 2022, 5nm as well, but 128 Zen 4 C cores. The C equaling cloud optimized. Yeah, and for cloud they're saying improved power efficiency and density optimized cache hierarchy. Yeah, whatever that means, right? But what that feels like is it's almost um, what it feels like is, you know, that with the Intel's P and E cores,
Mm-hmm.
this sounds like their variant of the E cores.
Yeah.
They're just getting bit more on there, and they're basically just kind of having them there for multi-threaded workloads and that and the like. And in this case, I'm guessing your virtualization because it's for the cloud. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very, very interesting to see where they go with that.
Mm-hmm.
The last fun fact from that event was AMD are collaborating with the US Department of Energy and Oak Ridge's National Laboratory and actually Cray, the guys who do supercomputers, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're designing this thing called the Frontier supercomputer, which is expected to deliver 1.5 exaflops of peak processing power. Coming online, I think they said this year. Whether it has or not, I'm not sure. Uses an optimized third gen AMD EPYC CPU
Yeah.
for HPC and AI, AMD Instinct 250X accelerators, designed to power these exascale systems. To be clear, what does exascale computing refer to? Yeah, it refers to computing systems capable of calculating at least 10 to the power of 18, 10 to the power of 18 floating point operations per second.
Yeah.
That's one exaflop. So obviously it puts the super in supercomputer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, as of January this year, yeah, there was no computer on Earth that was able to do this. So, you know, this may be the first thing on the market to do this. And in terms of mind sharing for AMD, it's kind of like it's going to use their Milan product. So it's good for mind share and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what got from that is that number one, it feels like we will see Zen 3D for consumers, and it will have a significant uptick in performance, and it may also compete with Alderlake. And the other thing I would say is that clearly in 2022, Zen 4, we're talking about another uplift in the number of cores and that sort of thing. So that should be kind of quite exciting. So there's significant competition here, and it looks like that whole scenario we talked about, where we wanted Intel and AMD to be trading blows continuously, you know, the whole Godzilla, you know, like movie thing that we talked about, let them fight, is happening.
Yeah.
Which is great news for us. Great news for us. Now, before we leave this subject, I reckon one thing I will say is that Nvidia, right, have some news. Not all of it that great. I feel like an Nvidia hater because every time I talk about them, I've never got great news about them, right? But they've recently, first of all, released an FSR-like upscaler. I think it's in the driver, and unlike DLSS, it can be easily adopted. Is what I'm understanding. Yeah, it was kind of interesting why they did that. If you know what I mean, it just feels like they did it to kind of like tarnish AMD's FSR technology. This again, this thing that Nvidia released, it's like a spatial upscaler, so it's similar. I won't say tarnish, but you know, they're just saying to the world, yep, we've got one as well. Here you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're re-releasing the 2060, but in 12 gigabytes. Yeah. Some people are speculating this is to do with mining, so on and so forth. I just think a 2060 with 12 gigabytes of video RAM, it kind of feels weird. Right? It kind of feels weird because really that's 2060. I mean, you know, for its time it was capable enough. But this ain't no 4K card, if you know what I mean. It's very interesting that they're going down that kind of they're going down that path. Don't know if you've been following the rest of their kind of product lineup, but it just feels all over the place. There's rumours they're about to release a 3080 with, I think it was 12 gigabytes. Then they got a 3070 Ti with 16 gigabytes. You know, it's just confusing. It's a confusing landscape. I mean, like, now further to that is that their ARM acquisition looks completely stalled now.
Yeah, well, the competition, the regulators have gone in, right? So,
yeah, the US FTC, Federal Trade Commission.
Yeah.
They're actually suing to block Nvidia's acquisition of ARM
Yeah.
For obviously fairly obvious competition, grounds and whatnot.
Mm.
I don't think the UK government's too pleased with the whole Nvidia purchasing kind of arm situation,
Mm-hmm.
and there's speculation that the other big players who use ARM are also really kind of literally pun up in arms about this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it just stalls progress, right? It's just stalling it. So.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't know what Nvidia are gonna do with it.
Mm,
That's the problem. So, not great news on the Nvidia front. There is some news, but there's some strange things happening there. If you know what I mean, very very
yeah,
strange.
yeah.
I mean, let's see. Maybe by CES, there'll be a bit more information about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, Al, there you have it. What do you think of Alderlake? What's your view on it?
It still sounds interesting. I think it's still waiting for that really interesting test use case because the things I saw in the reviews were obviously trying to push it to its limits on either its gaming or video editing or some kind of thing that's kind of heavy in terms of the workload. Whereas I guess the older lake is designed to do a combination of hiding kind of efficient light workloads as well as doing the heavy workload and kind of doing both at the same time. I guess. Would I move to it? Probably not. I don't think. I'm still happy with my AMD kind of kit. Interested in the next gen maybe, but even so, I mean I'm on a what was it, a 3700X. Still works nice and well. No issues with it at all. I don't see a need necessarily to push a bit further. Yeah.
Yeah, you still have an upgrade path. That's the thing here as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, if anything, I'd want to replace the GPU, but the GPU, I don't know. It's the GPU market's still pretty rubbish, I think, at the moment. So.
Yeah, I don't think they're not seeing things basically get it better until sometime next year, and it sounds like more like a Q2 thing.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's actually, I think for my own kind of situation, that would work for me because I basically refreshed my hardware just before the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
a year before the new gen released. But
Mm.
then by that point of getting hold of the next generation of GPUs became almost difficult, not impossible, but certainly very difficult and very pricey.
Yeah.
And again, I hear AMD have, they're pushing their GPU tech forward.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens. I mean, I've always maintained that RDNA 2 felt like for me a Zen Plus moment, not a
Mm.
Zen 2 moment, and certainly not a Zen 3 moment.
Yeah.
And Al, I think with that said, and having given Intel the salute, said well done for being competitive, and acknowledging that AMD certainly not standing still, they're there to take whatever crown is out there to be taken, yeah. And Nvidia, well, in terms of news, things can only get better for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say let's move on to the next topic. So, guys, I think the next topic I want to talk about is really Activision Blizzard,
Mm-hmm.
their continued woes, and really, let's center this around Kotick, their CEO. Okay, so I'm just gonna summarize what's been going on, recently. So obviously, Activision and Blizzard have been really involved in sexual harassment allegations, sexual discrimination allegations. Jennifer O'Neill, who was their co-head of Blizzard, really just stepped down after 3 months, noting she was being paid less than the other co-head. I think it's a Mighty Barra.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, it also came to light that Bobby Kotick had in the past made death threats to, I believe, a female colleague or subordinate.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it sounded.
Mistress,
Potentially,
probably.
potentially. Jennifer O'Neill also expressed a real lack of faith in Activision's leadership to improve the company's culture. I mean, straight off the bat, it seemed like they paid her less or gave her a less lucrative offer than the other co-head, who's male. Now, we've had employees of Activision protesting staging walkouts, and there's a big move there to get some of those employees signed up to a union. Okay, signed up to a union. And allegedly, an email sent out by an executive, Fran Townsend, was actually drafted by Kotick himself, who then subsequently labelled the email as tone deaf, so absolved himself of any sort of public blame for it. There was a 2018 firing of former Blizzard technology chief, Ben Kilgore, who faced multiple allegations of sexual harassment, but was still thanked for his contribution in an internal communication. In 2017, Dan Bunting, co-head of Activision's Call of Duty studio Treyarch, faced allegations of sexual harassment. An internal investigation in 2019 reportedly recommended he be fired, but Kotick stepped in to save him. Now, Bobby Kotick himself, to be honest, turned around Activision's fortunes. He owns 25% of the company and clearly has a lot of influence. However, Bobby Kotick has also been given the dreaded vote of confidence, in response to the Wall Street Journal's report. And some might say this is good news, okay? But I'll just kind of I'll read what was said by the board, what was communicated by the board. The Activision Blizzard board remains committed to the goal of making Activision Blizzard the most welcoming and inclusive company in the industry. Under Bobby Kotick's leadership, the company is already implementing industry-leading changes, including a zero-tolerance harassment policy, a dedication to achieving significant increases to the percentages of women and non-binary people in our workforce, and significant internal and external investments to accelerate opportunities for diverse talent. The board remains confident that Bobby Kotick appropriately addresses workplace issues brought to his attention. Full stop. So guys, obviously some of it doesn't make for good reading, but I just kind of wanted to get your views on it. I mean, obviously sexual harassment, discrimination, a lack of diversity, it's not a new thing in any industry. But the way it's been reported around kind of Activision and Blizzard make it sound as though, they're definitely behind the times, subpar. I don't know how to kind of say it, politically correctly. It just seems like a bit of a shit show, to be honest.
Yeah. Can I just add to that context as well? His base salary was 1.75 million, but he got awarded nearly 150 million in stock. So his total compensation for the year was 154.6 million, which, he's getting paid significantly more than other leading gaming publishers.
But he's been CEO for years. I mean, I think CEOs, the position usually kind of, people come in and out of that CEO position. It's, ultimately more of a change position than it is anything else.
Yeah, I think that it's got an extra, it's ×2 plus an extra 0 on the end of his total package. There's no need for a human to get paid that kind of money, right? Because all of that dictates behaviour.
Yeah, but it's still, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's still eclipsed by, if you talk about Jeff Bezos and co, they're on a different level as well. So, you might think Bobby Kotick gets paid a lot. That is probably because Activision Blizzard are making enough money for him to be compensated as such. It's really difficult. It's up to the board really to address that. I mean, they had a choice.
Yeah, I don't think you can compare. I mean, my personal opinion is you can't compare Kotick to maybe Bezos. Bezos has just basically sent people to outer space. I personally don't feel they're in the same league.
It's a game industry makes as a collective a lot of money, and you could argue that Activision and probably EA make large amounts of revenue, but it's dwarfed by Apple's and the Amazons make significant, and then those other companies add value to much wider industries. But yeah, not to go down the rabbit hole. I think him getting paid significantly more, and probably seeing himself as a leader amongst all the CEOs in the gaming industry, probably, I'm speculating here, but probably gave him the kind of the feeling that he's untouchable, which you can kind of see in some of his behaviour.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of reason why I just.
It is a problem when you get to those extremely senior roles. You become almost you're convincing yourself to an extent as you get to that kind of level of success.
Yeah, but given the types of accusations, the allegations, and the real negative, press, we've also hearing that there's a lot of internal pressure. Maybe not so much by the board itself, but certainly by the employees. Yeah. Is this going to trigger Bobby Kotick to step down? Because in my mind, I doubt it, because he just seems to have so much control.
I think it will eventually. The actions that Sony
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Xbox have taken, and other companies that want to, do less with Activision Blizzard until some of this calms down, I think will result in, really bad, longer term, kind of positions around it. They'll have to, in the short term, they'll survive with things like, Diablo 4's around the corner, Diablo Immortal's around the corner, releases that have already been done. But they've lost morale in terms of the people that they've got. The next releases in the next year or two after that is going to really struggle, and the collaboration that they'll get, the revenues that they'll get, will be probably significantly reduced in a couple more
Well,
years.
Nintendo have come out also, but but some of the numbers I saw, I think is the MPT numbers for November. Guess what's at the top of the sales numbers? It's Call of Duty
Call of
Vanguard,
Duty?
and
Yeah.
so you've got Call of Duty Vanguard not being great, and then you've got
But that number's also dropped, though, hasn't it? Like, I mean, because it's another World War game compared to what a normal Call of Duty game generates. It's dropped. And I don't know if because it's another World War game or whether there is a little bit of the gaming community, like us, a bit more interested in what's going on, particularly the older gamers. The people are being reluctant to buy this sort of games. I think going back to what Al was saying, it's not just Activision. Ubisoft this week as well. It's been labelled as a mass exodus happening in that studio, right? With long-term people at very senior positions and pods of teams that are leaving. I imagine that's going to start to happen at Activision, and even Bungie this week, or actually while I was away, actually they've had some stuff around their narrative team who've had same sort of stuff as Activision, but a much smaller scale. Probably not the sexual harassment, but everything else has been happening at smaller scales. Whereas they publicise themselves as kind of, or have a perception of being an industry leader. I think this is a problem that's happened across the industry, with Activision kind of making the bubble burst. I think we're going to see some massive changes, and I think what you mentioned around unions and all that sort of stuff.
It's a wider problem, right? There's we're kind of on the end of COVID to an extent. Obviously, there's the new variant and other things kind of going around, but there's obviously the term, the Great Resignation that's across many industries, not just gaming, and people are just reevaluating their lives. Do they want to continue with the gaming crunch that happens all the time? Do they want to sit in a company that has these allegations of sexual harassment? They have a choice. They're now rethinking their life priorities, and there's other options now. So why would they?
There was people in there was people. I saw an article the other day. People in Ubisoft who left and they tripled their pay.
But that's the other problem with gaming is because gaming is it's such high demand, right? Some people are willing to pay to get paid less to be in that industry, but maybe they've just had enough.
I think you make a good point about reevaluating. Post. I mean, I know we're not quite out of the pandemic or COVID, but obviously people have had a bit of time. If you're not getting the reward, the respect, and you don't like the people who are running the company, then it's an easy decision. To be honest. I would also say, to your point, that it is wider than the games industry. We've seen it in organisations that we've obviously personally worked, for and with. in that there are initiatives to readdress that, the balance, diversity, treating people with a bit of respect, to a lesser degree, the crunch culture. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
what we've seen on our respective industries. It feels to me that other industries have been on this path for, let's say, a few years,
10 years.
but now, yeah, but now the games industry, it feels like they're lagging behind. I don't know if this is the medium press kind of painting a different sort of picture than the realities of it, but it does feel that they're further behind. There's no smoke without fire, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
And I kind of do wonder about that, why that is.
Hmm.
Again, if you have characters like a Bobby Kotick running the show for one of the biggest organisations in the industry, where, let's be honest, he seems to have godlike controlling powers.
Untouchable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's almost untouchable, because thinking about the Call of Duty Vanguard numbers, I don't know what else Activision could have done to make that particular game an unmitigated kind of disaster. They said it, in
Hmm.
World War Two, which is these days a bit of a no-no. People's interest is lowered, let's say. I heard it wasn't very, tight and quite buggy. And in and around all of that, there's all this negativity around the organisation.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yet, there they are. They're still top of the pile.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine a lot of those people have bought that game based on history of how the game's been the last couple of years. I would like to see
Mm,
what the numbers of people actually still playing it. Actual daily users probably really low.
Hmm.
There was something that's come up in not to do with gaming, right? As I've been looking at investments and crypto and also looking at macroeconomics, there's the people that talk about every, it's called the fourth turning. This is the label people use, right? Which is effectively saying every time you have four generations born, the gap between those four generations is so big you get a lot of disruption, and that's happened through the history of time. And you can relate that to the World War. Like we at school were probably taught a lot about World War Two. The youngsters now probably don't get the same level of depth that we were taught, and they obviously get more disconnected. So I think there's some bigger themes, macro, that are changing, particularly around work culture. We've spoken offline a lot about in our line of work how we find the culture of so bizarre because we have people a generation older than us who are in these leadership positions who are working in an organisation that's been, the pattern of how they work have been dictated by their generation above them and the generation above them, and they've been slowly changing, but not enough. And I think the game industry
Hmm.
is at that same phase where,
inflection
yeah,
point.
where
Yeah.
I mean, what, consoles have been around, what, 30 years now, 40? I mean, probably the meat of it's probably last 30 years now.
Yeah, the consoles that we that have basically built up this industry, it's probably like 30 years or something along those lines,
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly. Yeah, so I think the way that these companies have been run, these companies have grown, adopted the corporate style of running an organisation from other industries, and applied it to this. Not it's organically got to the right way of running these type of companies. And like I can talk about Bungie forever, but the current CEO seems to have although they've had some issues come out, right. But that was
Mm,
from the historic issues. The CEO the last 2 years, they've been really pumping the diversity, giving away free game, not game modes, items in game, talking about it in their blog posts, promoting it within the Twitch and YouTube community, streamers and etc. And really seemed, and even going to some of the rallies around Me Too and etc. etc. So they're doing their bit to also influence the new gamers who.
yeah, I take your point though. I mean, I do wonder, if some of the behaviours are just driven by like generations, if you know
Mm,
what I mean. Some of the things my dad would have said in his day, I would never dream of saying, right, no way.
mm,
Those things would be, they're classes that, that's taboo, you know what I
mm.
mean? Don't go there.
But that is also the evolution of where we're at,
Yeah.
right? Whether you call it woke culture or cancel culture
Yeah, yeah.
or other things like that. But that is just the way that things you say, back in 10, 20 years ago, You just can't say these certain things today. And that's just the world has changed.
Yeah, I personally don't understand it. I mean, one of the rules I kind of always have lived by is just you got to respect people. Treat everybody the same. It's just I've never understood it why you wouldn't, especially if people are quite capable. I don't know. It's maybe it is in the generations. It's not so much. I don't know. It's not just the work culture. It's like you said, Jay. It's like who's running the company.
Yeah, I think as the gaming industry evolves and the new generation are coming through, what the company stands for, making the game I think is going to become more and more important.
Hmm.
Myself, for probably last couple of years, thought, as the generation before us thought, we're compared to them, they used to say we're lazy, we're not disciplined enough, and it's easy to think about the youngsters now and think about they're not going to care, they'll just play Call of Duty, whatever, and they're just blindly. I don't think that's the case. I think youngsters drink less, they're more connected to what's going on. And I think they actually do care what the company that they are playing games for stands for. So, going back to your
Yep.
question, is he gonna stay? I'll he'll hang on for a bit, like I was saying, but there's no way he's staying. And there's a general theme across the industry that all these companies are gonna have to do a better job of actually operating in the mode by which they really present themselves out. Perception has to be reality.
I'm just 50-50 about this. I just think I really am. I just think he's not to say that he shouldn't kind of step down and there shouldn't be basically an exchange of batons to somebody else that could better represent them in the times that we're in now. But I just feel he's got so much control and power, right? That unless kind of sales revenue, and unless some of the maybe the big platform holders really refuse to do business.
I think they will. I think they will. There's too much light shown on it, and like I was saying, there's two parts to the equation. There's the money generation and the right leaders to make value for shareholders, and also the platform owners like Sony and Nintendo. The other part is a people business. If these people who build the games don't believe in the company, and the timing and the storm with COVID and reflection on doing something important in your life, they will walk. And then as soon as a team or a pod of go, it's very hard to replicate the same capability that quickly.
Mm.
And I think like
there'll be delays.
Yes, delays.
Yeah.
As I was saying, the games will suffer over the next 2, 3, 4 years if they don't make a change, and they'll know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think my concern is that this guy is maybe the equivalent of games industry Putin. Like he'll move into maybe the chairman role and he'll meld into the background, but he'll still be controlling things. That'd be my only
Well, yeah, if he owns 25%, then yeah, he would by default. It's kind of similar to what Jeff Bezos has done, right? He stepped down as technically the CEO. He will still be on the board though. He'll still be a controlling individual in that company, but he won't actually have to do anything with the logistical running of the company. So, it's an option.
Yeah, it's real food for thought. I mean, I mean, as with all these things, only time would tell. And I know what I'd like to see. I'd like to see justice served. That's the reality. I'd like to see justice served. And let's be honest, right? If that guy was to step down anytime soon, he's leaving on top of a pile of money. That it'd be honestly, he's not going to be in a bad situation.
Yeah, the thing is, and this is another topic, got nothing to do with gaming, but people like that. Let me describe it this way, right? I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast where Mike Tyson was on there, and I was surprised about the number of books he's actually read. And he read when he was at his peak, he was reading a lot of books around dictators and world leaders. And he said over the last few thousands of years, he said every single one of them who managed to live until later in their life regretted conquering the world and actually butchering so many people. Unless he's actually completely mad, at some point in his life, he will regret it. You can sit on that pile of cash. At some point, that cash means nothing. You can keep piling it up, and when you get to the later part of your life and you look back on what you've done, and if you actually are not mad, you will regret. You might not say it to people, but you will regret being the way that you are. That's my viewpoint.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting viewpoint. I just think it's, the things you hear about this company. I mean, the fact that Jennifer O'Neill did it not get a package on parity with the other co-head as they were going through all of this. And this again, it's just speculation, but that's what it said.
Sorry, I should use my words very carefully. I think we're all fully supportive that should not happen.
Yeah, definitely.
It happens all the time in all the industries.
Absolutely
So I was going to use the
correct.
word normal, but that's the wrong word. But it's a recurring problem that happens in every industry, and there are various reasons for that. Some of them are conscious, and some of them are unconscious. Like one of the unconscious things that was mentioned to me by a female leader in a different industry was that sometimes women don't negotiate as hard. So some of it is down to them not pushing that hard. They feel like they're getting a good package and getting the balance of making a difference, whereas a guy would probably push a bit harder on the in the salary, and so there are conscious things and unconscious things. So, but that for me, that wasn't a surprise, because I think that's a problem across every industry.
Yeah,
Needs to be fixed.
I do agree, but I also think that, my God, what were they thinking? I mean, how did they not think this was going to come out? I mean, they're in the midst of a storm here, right? You do what you can to ensure there's parity here, yeah. Not to be disrespectful to Jennifer O'Neill, but I can't believe that one of the reasons she wasn't put in place as a co-head was as a PR kind of exercise. I mean, I'm sure she's extremely capable, and she would be in there and thereabouts, yeah. But that must have been in the back of their minds. Yeah, and then to go and do that, go all that trouble doing that, put her in place, and then, well, let's look at the package here. Yeah, okay, well, yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about it. It'll never come out. That was just bizarre. I just found that whole thing bizarre. It was just like, I couldn't understand that.
But you know how any corporate works, right? 'Cause, it's like it'll be baked into some HR process, and then I'll be surprised if they actually even had a meeting that was with the actual other rest of the leaders and say, okay, let's compare the salaries against everybody else's and see whether it's. It doesn't happen like that, do they? HR will manage the process, and that's why I got missed.
That's probably undeniable. That's probably a lot of what happened. I mean, I think one of the dangers we feel is that we feel that some of these organisations are that much more effective than some others, but they're actually all the same.
Exactly. Yeah. Too big.
I don't know.
Yeah, too big. Exactly, too big.
Yeah, I don't know how it works in US employment law, but I know in the UK ones, there's very senior directors will always get. It's transparent. You can see it on the company reports. So, hiding stuff like that for a very senior person is impossible. But if the US is hiding that, then then this sort of stuff can happen.
Yeah. So, guys, I think we've talked about Activision for quite a long time. I mean, Al, just one more thing. Like, do you think Kotick's gonna stay or go? What's your view?
If I was to do a bet, gone by the end of next year.
Okay, so it looks like it's a 2-1 thing here. So Jay thinks Kotick's gonna go. Al, you're the same. I think basically he's gonna weather this storm.
Yeah.
By some minor miracle. Either that or he'll do a Putin, move upstairs, and then we'll kind of see him move downstairs at some. I don't know. I'm just that's my suspicion to all this, but
You'll have more time to harass people if he gets moved. Being a board member. That's what I'm worried about.
Okay, guys. I think with that said, let's move on to the next topic. Right, guys. So the next topic I really want to talk about is really our favorite console gaming generations. And I thought this would be a nice way to really bookend, our year, because this is probably going to be the last podcast we do this year. And it's a good way for people to get to know us, if you like, and get to know our kind of like gaming history, and equally people to understand what makes us tick.
Yeah.
Really, I think what I want to get into is what generation. Obviously, I'll accept whatever machines are in that generation. Totally up to you guys. Yeah, but it has to be a console. Okay, it has to be a console.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about the games, obviously the what, the why, and it could be any number of reasons. Yeah, gaming rated or not, whatever that may be, and just getting into that, and again, if you want to talk about if there was another generation that ran it quite close, in your decision, just say why you picked one over the other. Yeah, and what maybe made it, both interesting. So it's quite open-ended, but I think what I'll do is actually I'll start with this one. Yeah, I'll start with this one. So
Mm-hmm.
my favorite gaming generation is basically the generation that had PS2, GameCube, and
Mm-hmm.
Xbox. Yeah, and the
Mm.
reason for this,
Mm.
I think, quite a simple one. For me, that's when this kind of freeway dance we have right now started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had Sony with the PS2 flexing their muscles and basically making history because obviously PS2 sold, amazing. We had Xbox getting into the market, and from the GameCube perspective, for me that was the last time I think Nintendo really wanted to compete with the arms race, the technology
Mm.
arms race. Before they kind of did other things like the Wii, Wii U's, Switches, so on and so forth. And I owned every one of those consoles as well. So that was one of the generations where I just said, I'll own every one of them. Also, if you look at
Yeah.
the games you had on these consoles, PS2, Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, Jack and Daxter from Naughty Dog, Ratchet and Clank,
Oh,
a couple of
okay.
iterations. Up Your Arsenal was one of the iterations. God of War, yeah. Metal Gear
Those
Solid Snake
games as well,
Eater,
originals.
Devil May Cry. I love Devil May Cry. Silent Hill 2, Final Fantasy 10 and 12, Disgaea, if you loved your turn-based, and GTA 3, Vice City, San Andreas. At the time, huge games, big games, technically amazing. I don't know if you guys have loved your shoot 'em ups, but Gradius 5, amazing, and
Yep.
Virtual Fighter 4 Evolution, because I used to love my beat 'em ups at that stage. Tekken 5,
Yep.
SSX
Oh,
Tricky.
what a game.
Oh, what a game! Yeah, exactly, what a game, right? Zone of the Enders, if you guys
I
remember
played
that.
that one, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys may not like this, but Armored Core. I used to play a lot of Armored Core, and we talked about
Mm.
customization, and that game was all about the customization in builds. Time Splitters, yeah,
Oh,
Future Perfect,
yep.
right? I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
that.
yep, yeah, I like that game too.
Yeah, put the four-way into four-way multiplayer.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
for the makers of GoldenEye, wasn't it? Yeah.
that's correct. Yeah, yeah. And then Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance, which not many people maybe will remember because there was a recent Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, which I think is a third-person action game. But the original on PS2 was an overhead Diablo-like experience, and for its time, looked amazing. Yeah, and again about your character builds. Now that was just on the PS2. GameCube, Super Mario Sunshine. Yeah,
I, di-
Super Mario
I
Sunshine.
didn't
A
like
very
that.
different Mario.
I didn't like that game. But you're gone.
Yeah. Resident Evil 4.
Oh, what a game.
It changed what Resident Evil was. Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime, right?
Mm.
And then one of my personal favourite, F-Zero GX on GameCube.
Yep.
Wow.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah. Wipeout in my view.
Yep.
You had The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker on that. Obviously, Mario Kart's Mario Kart. Another personal favourite of mine, Ikaruga, which is a shoot 'em up, vertical, amazing. I think this was from, I can't remember now. I think it was either from Cable Treasure Software. And if you guys remember Beautiful Joel,
Yeah,
some
yeah,
old school 2D
yeah.
stylized combat.
I never played it, but it looked pretty good.
Yeah, it was an amazing game. It was just very impactful and like a lot of fun. They had Star Wars Rogue Leader there as a launch title,
Yeah,
and I think I just remember that. I had something similar on the N64 we talked about earlier.
Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, but Rogue Leader had they got the Death Star looking like the Death Star.
Yeah.
Yeah, with your X-wing going down, and that's all I can say about it. For the time, I think, wow, yeah, wow, right. And of course, Xbox, Halo, and Halo 2, Knights of the Old Republic, Fable, Jet Set Radio Future. I don't know if you guys played the Chronicles of Riddick. Amazing game.
Yeah, no, I loved the film, but it was a good game. And I know it was got 10 out of 10, didn't it? Or 20 out of 10. Something.
Burnout 3 Takedown on the Xbox was amazing.
Yeah, it was good. That was a good franchise.
Otogi, Myth of Demons. I'm not sure if you guys would have played that. It's a From Software game. Before they did the whole Demon Souls and, Dark Souls thing. Yeah, the Souls thing. Project Gotham Racing. Ninja Gaiden made itself on the Xbox. A little personal favourite of mine. Panzer Dragoon. Yeah, it's basically Space Harrier with dragons is what it was. Yeah.
Isn't it like Star Fox 64?
It pretty much is, yeah. It's pretty much, and Star Fox is like Space Harrier with kind of spaceships.
Oh, Lilac Wars, it was just called.
Yeah, yeah. On the rails type of kind of action, and obviously Dead or Alive 3, yeah, with its bounce physics. It's probably not that too PC these days, but that's what happened. Right?
Was Soul Calibur on there as well?
Yeah. That's where Soul Calibur started to kind of like. I think Soul Calibur.
It was Dreamcast, wasn't it? When it was.
Yeah, it started on Dreamcast and then made its way over to, I think, all the other consoles.
Yeah.
At that point, yeah. And one fun fact, though I'd never played Psychonauts, the first Psychonauts was on the original Xbox, and now we've got obviously the sequel. On the current gen Series X and S and PC. So that is my pick anyway. And dude, I had, basically I spent a bloody, in real kind of terms, a ton of money on games at that point.
I was gonna say you must have been filthy rich in your 30s.
I just had a lot of, income to burn at that point. Yeah, and that's all I did. And I remember with the PS2 as well, I had all the light gun games as well. Plus the light guns.
Oh, Time Crisis.
Yeah, Time Crisis.
Was it Point Blank?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Point Blank.
And you had there was one with Ninja Fiend, old school Japan, and another, I think there was a vampire based one from Sega, just House of the Dead.
Oh, House of the Dead.
Just basically had all of that kind of stuff going on in my living room. Every one of these consoles I own, I had 4 kind of control pads for. And obviously the adapter for the PS2, so...
Yeah,
and it felt like arcade level graphics at home, didn't it, at that period? Which was a big thing. Arcade graphics aren't that good now. It's the consoles are strong, but at that time they were always leading, and then it suddenly caught up with it, didn't it? So
yeah, in some ways exceeded it, or there was parity, and in some cases it was better than parity. So I mean, I just got a stash of these games that are basically sitting at my mum's kind of like house at this point. Hopefully, it's gonna be worth a fortune at some point. All the old consoles are working, which is good. But yeah.
Unfortunately, those ones won't be in cellophane anymore.
No, they won't. I mean, I put them to really good use at the time. But yeah, I mean, just groundbreaking times. I mean, Xbox kind of getting involved. Giving us Halo.
What game?
PS2, obviously, that's when they started to flex in my humble opinion, that's when they started basically doing the whole first party thing, and you kind of saw these big titles come out of them, and there was some experimentation as well as they were finding their feet. Like I played stuff like Primal, It was a first party title, I think, but it's largely forgotten these days. Yeah. So there was, they did try things out. Let's put it that way.
I know this isn't the topic, but I just feel excited when you mention all those games because that was a period where you didn't get absorbed into one big game and then maybe have a bit of time to play a few others. Each
Yeah.
game was kind of smaller, a short experience, and you could experience a lot of them. And each game
Yeah.
was very different that you've called the list there. Nowadays, each one is just draws you in, and you kind of have to grind your way to keep going, right?
Yeah, and half the games as well. You didn't have to invest a whole life into it. You could pick up and play quite easily.
Mm.
The mechanics weren't as sophisticated.
Exactly. I think that's when
Mm.
Nintendo, the Switch, has stayed in that space.
Mm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
they have.
interesting list.
Good for them as well. I mean, like, it's allowed them to not play the kind of, I think,
The arms race.
yeah, the arms race, technology arms race card, because their games, their characters, can be done with kind of lower spec hardware. They're not trying to be uber realistic or photorealistic or whatever it may be.
Focus on fun gameplay. Yeah.
Yeah, someone needs to. Someone
Yeah.
needs to. So guys, that is my pick. Because much love to that generation. I think what we'll say, right? There's this. It was a toss up between well, it wasn't quite a toss up. I mean, this was always gonna get my pick here. But the other thing that it was vying against was actually the Xbox 360 and PS3 and obviously Wii generation.
Mm.
More of a technology arms race, and then obviously Nintendo doing other things, if you like. Microsoft and Xbox were a genuine, bona fide competitor. Yeah, they were winning most of that generation for most of the time. Sony was forced to produce good software to try and turn the tide, and hence at this, right now, Sony's first party is super strong. Because you think about what they released, Uncharted 2, stuff like that. But the early part of that generation, wasn't great. So, but yeah, that was my other pick. But it wasn't that close, if I'm being honest.
Was the first Uncharted on PS3 or was it? It was
PS3,
yes, PS3.
PS3.
Yeah.
So I think Naughty Dog worked exclusively on Jack and Daxter.
Yeah, I played all three of those games. I love them.
Yeah, great games, right? And then they kind of left that behind, and then they kind of went to Uncharted, and that's when we saw Insomniac. Obviously, they carried kind of like Ratchet and Clank forward, but they got into Resistance.
Oh, that was a good
Resistance
game
2
as
was
well. Yeah.
a favorite of mine. Halo 3. And, there's all sorts of stuff as well. But it's again great generation. But GameCube, PS2, Xbox. That's the generation for me. Okay, who's next?
Yeah,
Yeah, you wanna go?
I'll happily go next. I mean, it's a hard one, right? But I'm stuck between two generations. But my kind of lane, let's call it such, is probably Nintendo, and I'm going to come at it from an angle of how it made me feel so excited, and I guess I'll start with the SNES. I never actually owned one, but I have fond memories of just going to birthday party sleepovers at friends. I had a Mega Drive, but stuff like playing Mario Kart all night and not sleeping. Like with friends' houses at birthday parties with like 5 to 10 of us. Street Fighter, Bomberman.
Mm.
Bomberman,
But yeah, I mean,
classic.
classic. And then like just going to Blockbusters and renting a game for those birthday parties. And then I mean, what other games for the SNES can I go into? Pilot Wings, Star Fox. I mean, in hindsight, when you play a lot of those games now, they don't really hold up. But at the time, it just when I see them on YouTube, or you felt like a kid. You felt, those always stick with me. And then the next generation was the N64. I haven't actually told anybody this, but I managed. So I actually I got one and for Christmas, and I actually was. I had opened the box and I was playing it secretly before Christmas Day. I had Lilac Wars. What a
How
game!
did you do that? You need to plug that thing in, don't you?
Yeah, you know, it was. I don't know how I did it, but I was taking it out of the box and I wasn't unwrapping all the cables. um, but yeah, so I had Lilac Wars and like just playing Mario 64.
That was a mad. That was yeah. I remember. I remember Mario
You know, they used to have those kiosks in like HMV, and you're seeing that like what 3D? The graphics are mind blowing, and obviously it's just a fun game. And then Rogue Squadron. I mean, I used to love that. Was what a game. I had the little expansion pack you put in the N64 just to boost the graphics. So your Horizon was just it was just marginally better. What else is there? Oh, Diddy Kong Racing. I don't know if you ever played that one, but it's
I
like
did, yeah.
yeah, like Mario Kart, where you could fly and there was hovercrafts and karts.
They've obviously taken in the two things amalgamated now.
Yeah,
because I remember like that's what kind of Mario has done recently, hasn't he?
Exactly. And then the Banjo-Kazooie. And I know a lot of people talk about the N64. They had a lot of crap games, but as a kid playing them, I thought they were all amazing. Killer Instinct.
Yes, Killer Instinct.
Oh my god, you do like a 64 hit. Like we remember going to birthday parties. There's more on the SNES, more so, where trying to get the 64 hit combo, and your fingers were absolutely mashed from trying to do the moves for hours. And you pass the controller on, and someone will pull it off, and you all get so excited. On the SNES, also kind of like Donkey Kong Country. Wow, the graphics were absolutely amazing at the time. The platforming. Yeah, so I mean, those are the two generations. If I had to pick one, I mean, I could relate to everything that you called out around the kind of the PS2 and especially the Xbox. Where I saw that Halo and played it in those kiosks in HMV. I was like, I've got to get one of these and I managed to get me and my friend. He knew someone. He managed to get like a cheap Dell laptop, and I also got a developer Xbox. So it was see-through green, which I regretted because it stopped working after about a year and a half. But and it was actually no benefit. I thought I was getting this cool see-through Xbox, but it had these extra ports in the back and some extra cables, which I didn't at the time. I didn't know what I could do with it. But I'd probably say 50 quid. But Halo, I can relate to that. It was amazing. But yeah, coming back to what I was saying, I think the SNES, which I never owned, and the N64, which I did, days of
makes me want to whip out my emulator because I've got so many of those games still, and it just makes me want to kind of like just play some,
Yeah, when you mentioned on the PS2 about all of these kind of like turn-based games, which I've only kind of started to like in the last couple of years. I wish I was more into that at the time, and I missed out on like Final Fantasy VII but yeah, those two generations I really enjoyed. I'm trying to emulate that for my kids as well. So yeah.
You got a lot of wonder. I mean, the thing is that especially with Nintendo, I wouldn't call it shock and awe because it's a type of games they have also, but you get a lot of wonder. You kind of like boot up a SNES or a N64 game, and you kind of like you feel good, if you know what I mean. It's just kind of like the graphics and the feel of the game, and it always controls well at the time. At least that's what I remember of it, and they're always slick.
They're fun. They're just fun, and I think the Nintendo Switch, the first party games, all of them are hit. Like being Smash Brothers, I've owned on the Switch, and I haven't really played it. I've been playing it recently. It's so good. Each of the characters are from. Some of them are like it's got characters from non-Nintendo games, but it's like a gateway into games that you've played in the past just by a single character. I think the game's got like 70 odd characters or something. So
they know what they're doing.
Absolutely crazy, but yeah, and long may it continue. So
Yeah,
feeling like a kid.
that's the Nintendo magic,
Long way
right?
back to-
That's actually a good way of translating what I meant by wonder. That it just makes you feel like a kid. It kind of like transports you back and like you just feel good playing them. I mean, I don't know how to put it. It's just like it's like Christmas. It's like Christmas morning.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And opening that present, it's like Christmas morning.
Yeah. With my kids, we watched Snowman today, and that for me, watching that and hearing the music, it's like a portal back into being a child, and that's the same feeling with the N60 SNES and the N64. You can't beat it. But yeah, that's me. Al, do you want to?
I think I'm very similar, Jay. Like I was right in between those two, so it was either the SNES or the PlayStation genre, and I'm going with the PlayStation one. So PlayStation, N64, Sega Saturn, that generation. I think PlayStation coming onto the scene, huge game changer. It's the end of Sega, really, the beginning of the end of Sega. And I don't know if Xbox, I guess, was the one after, but it kind of set the scene, and Sony just absolutely trounced. They did so well, and it's one of those things that I played tons and tons of games on the PlayStation 1, and I still love it to bits. It was a shame that the retro PlayStation 1 Mini wasn't that well emulated, because I would have got one of those as well. I've got one of the SNES Minis, but yeah, I think my favorite generation is that PlayStation N64. There's so many good games. Sony came up with so many of the sort of key game sort of defining games that maybe not themselves as a studio, but things like the Final Fantasy series really kicked off the back of that. The Gran Turismo series, Tekken, Metal Gear Solid. Oh, there's just so many great games on the PlayStation 1
that was like a movie, wasn't it? It was like the first time you kind of movie game.
And it was that we mentioned Time Crisis earlier. That was the one where I started getting those the sort of light the light guns, and it was just I didn't have to spend £1 a pop to go the amount I played Time Crisis to death on my PlayStation 1 and I absolutely loved it. Was able to pre-predict all the characters coming out. Was clearing it nice and well, but that's what you get from having that sort of arcade experience at home then, and that was probably the main one that really got me going. Absolutely enjoyed the SNES, but PlayStation 1.
PlayStation, yeah.
Amazing.
That definitely was a bit of a game-changing generation. It kind of changed everything. Sega kind of disappeared as a hardware manufacturer at that point. They just stopped.
Yeah, they had one more, but the Dreamcast, but that quickly died. But it was the beginning of the end for Sega in terms of hardware.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much good stuff on the PlayStation. I mean, like you said, Gran Turismo was the first, I think, console game I kind of looked at and I said, God, why does that look? Is that real life? Kind of like I remember seeing it the first time because nothing.
Yeah, Gran Turismo.
Yeah, nothing looked like that or moved like that. It was just like, damn, is that real life? What is that? Is that a kind of video? What is that?
It pushed the bar up for sure, right? There was all of those reactions and trailers where people would be watching a video of Gran Turismo in a TV shop or something, and they'd be like, "Oh, is that a race going on?" and stuff like that. So, the other one I forgot was Wipeout.
Brilliant game.
I got absolutely. That was the beginning of that series for me, and that was immense. I still love and enjoy a good Wipeout game.
I remember kind of like because I waited a year till I got the PlayStation, and I just remember basically coming out of I think it was probably HMV at the time. Obviously now long defunct, but having the PS and Gran Turismo, and I think I had Tekken 3, and I was just so excited to get home. My God, I was so excited. I just
Tekken's so good. Yeah. I've just had a thought of on the N64, which was the Zelda.
Yes. Absolutely generation defining. I think there was ones on the N64.
God, did you guys ever used to go to one of these places where you could hire a PC or a console for an hour to play?
Not so much with consoles, but I think I've done something like that for a PC.
Okay, because there used to be a place where you could hire a console for an hour, and I remember playing Zelda there. It was
Mm.
an import actually. It was Zelda import. I was playing that. Brought it
Yeah,
came.
just amazing times. I mean,
Um,
I just remember Tekken 3. I mean, especially Tekken 3. I mean, because I just remember
Mm.
just sitting down on that game for hours and hours. And I literally finished it with every character multiple times. And I've to this date, right? I've never been, let's say, as good with a beat 'em up as I was with that game because that's all I was
Mm.
playing for a long time. My mates at the time used to be hugely frustrated with me. Couch cult was a big thing, and I used to get their arse kicked all the time. That game was just me sitting down there, just learning every single move. Yeah, really great times with PlayStation. But yeah, turning of the tide definitely. I do regret that I never ever got my hands on a Sega Saturn
Mm.
because obviously this whole retro thing in the back of my mind is a real thing now, and I kind of feel like I kind of one day want to get my hands on the real hardware. Like I don't know why. I don't know why I want
Mm.
want to do that. I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense to me.
an unfulfilled dream.
Yeah, it is a little bit, right? Because it's a great 2D sprite-based kind of console as well. If you like that sort of thing. Again, it was it was a very kind of interesting piece of hardware. What they were trying to do with it. So
And this just the PlayStation emulator. I'm just looking at Amazon now. What was the? I mean, the list of games look pretty good.
Yeah,
It's got.
it was pretty good in terms of the lineup that it had on it, but unfortunately, the emulator, the machine itself, just doesn't play it well. So you had frame drops and stuff like that, which is just you just can't really
Right.
accept it. So really unfortunate the way they did that, because otherwise I would have bought it as well.
yeah, it wasn't great.
Oh, they
No,
can't
it
fix
it
that.
has
Then
to
that's
be,
it. Baked
you,
into the
you have
hardware,
to
is
think
it?
of slightly better hardware, even like because it wasn't that expensive. I think when I looked at it, I was like, if they just put a bit more hardware onto it, would have been perfect. But yeah, it's a bit unfortunate that one.
And they just jumped onto the bandwagon
Mm, the
of
retro
the
minis, yeah,
NES and
yeah,
SNES
yeah.
minis, yeah. And retro is a real thing
Mm,
now. But it's a shame they didn't do a better job with it. I mean, there's a slim outside chance, and it actually it's not slim, it's microscopic, that Sony will actually do something
mm,
about it and maybe kind of release another iteration. But yeah, real shame.
That's a topic for another time. But there's rumours, aren't there? They're coming out with a Game
mm.
Pass
Yeah,
next year with a tiered model, and imagine one of the tiers has probably got access to some of the retro games, but it'll be like probably emulated on
I
on,
hate
on a server in the data
yeah,
center.
I'm not sure. I mean, my own personal feeling is it's going to be Amazon Prime type of offering
Mm.
where it's going to be multifaceted, is what I believe. But I really don't like the idea of this free tier thing they're talking about. I mean, at least the press are
Mhm,
talking
mhm.
about. I mean, it's called Project Spartacus, yeah, and but like free tiers, that sounds absolutely confusing. I think they should just buff up what they have ever so slightly, just to give it a bit more of a value add, and then have this ultimate tier or pro tier, what the hell they want to call it. But just this kind of free tier thing. I don't know if it's going to be a fork in the road. You've got the basic, and then you can go retro. You can do this. To me it doesn't make any sense. But we'll see. They got to do something, I'm sure. If not anything for anything else, just to kind of consolidate what they have.
Was there anything else, Al, on the PlayStation side that you
No, I just think that generation was amazing.
like Resident Evil and
Yeah, I
Destruction
love those
Derby? Remember
games.
that?
Absolutely love them. I've forgotten about things like more arcadey ones, but like Ridge Racer was also one of the series that it started, but
Oh
it's
wow.
died a death now. But it was one of those again quite defining for a PlayStation One. Yeah, just a amazing format, and the competition was just perfect. I think timing wise, the way that it came in. So
I think Sony redefined what the console or gaming could be, if you know what I mean. Because before that point, the people that used to basically play games were strictly kind
mm,
of young to mid-teens, I think. But they kind of opened it up to kind of like young adults, or 20 to 30 year olds, if you like, yeah. And then obviously Nintendo did something similar to Wii further down the line when they opened it up even further. But it's a very really really important generation. I mean, I think the thing is every
yep,
generation's important.
yep.
That's why it's so difficult to pick to pick one.
Just the last kind of question for me is: do you think that any of the new or current console generation just gone out give you the same sort of feeling of fun as we used to have with some of these retro consoles, or and if they don't, do you think that's because we're getting older now, and there's a magic around when you're a child playing stuff or a young adult?
Joe, do you want to go first?
I'll try and answer that. I think there's a lot to do with your age, obviously, because the feeling of wonder is much more difficult to achieve, I think. Plus, like, the older we've got with games, right, we're more critical, if you know what I mean. Because we play so many bloody games, right? I mean, like, you're going to be more critical naturally, right? And because you've learned more about technology and gaming and just the wider world, right? You're going to see things that you didn't see when you were that age. And I also think our time is really much more important to us now. Yeah, we simply can't sit there for 8 hours and whittle it away and be okay with a shit game. That ain't gonna hack it, right? That's not gonna work. Okay, never. But I will say this: I don't feel any less impressed with some of the games I've experienced recently. Yeah, no less impressed. But again, it goes back to me kind of looking at them through a much more of a critical eye. Yeah, and there are times I find myself being kind of forgetting about that side of my brain and just I'm just going to play the game. And that's when I totally start getting into it, and I forget about any of this assessment that we naturally do these days. And at that point, for a short amount of time, right, I get the same sort of kind of vibe and feeling from it, but it's not the whole time.
Just before Al jumps in with his view, I would say I get similarly excited, like you just said, but the duration of that excitement is probably shorter. But I do have those moments, and I think to myself, oh man, I love games, and I'm loving this game right now.
Definitely, there are moments you say, "Damn,
Yeah,
this is why I love
I'm
gaming.
living.
This is
I'm
why."
enjoying
You
life.
know, yeah, yeah, definitely. You
Yeah.
get that.
Yeah, I think my view on this is like, I don't know. I think it's the experiences are, I'm still waiting for something new. I think is the problem. I think with a lot of the generations that we move through, whether it's from 2 to 3 in terms of PlayStation, or 3 to 4, and even to 4 to 5 now, is I'm kind of waiting for something else. And if I look at the PlayStation 5, because I wasn't I wasn't jumping at trying to get a PlayStation 5, and still aren't really. Maybe get it for the next Gran Turismo. But I'm waiting for stuff like PSVR 2. I'm looking for something different, something a bit more interesting to kind of get me going. And I guess maybe it's also because I've got PCs and things that I'm kind of got accessibility to. Because I guess back when I was a kid, I just wouldn't have accessibility to most of this stuff. The arcades were one of those things you just just so happen to go past, and you'd enjoy playing that arcade game with with your friends and your family and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely changed. It's our age, maybe. But part of me is also thinking that it just needs a bit more of that new kind of nuance to gaming and gameplay that I'm kind of looking for.
Yeah, I'll basically speak on this when we kind of wrap up properly, right? But because I've just obviously I finished Ratchet and Clank, and there is something to this whole SSD thing, and it's probably not what we think it is, right? But I will say that the SSD is about keeping you in that moment for that bit longer. And if they design it properly, if they design the game around that, right, you're gonna feel, those feelings you had for maybe a little bit longer. Not for when we were 16 or anything like that. That ain't gonna happen again. Those guys, that time's
It's
gone,
interesting
guys.
because when you're kind of in a level and they've just done a filler while it's learning the next bit on a lift or whatever, you get distracted by your phone or by other things going in your room. The immersion gets broken and lost. And is that what you're saying that you had in Ratchet and Clank? You were
Yeah,
immersed for a lot
partly,
longer.
but that's definitely what I'm saying. Actually, not partly. That's definitely what I'm saying. But equally, like they can design the kind of scenarios and gameplay around that. Like when you write a scene for a movie these days, you can be as outlandish and as kind of out there as you want, because if you've got the money, you can deliver it. You're not bound by some of the limitations of, say, a console or a PC or anything like that. The SSDs, to some way, kind of like address that also, because you could be having a boss battle in this scenario, then all of a sudden, okay, we're going to switch it. You're going to be here now. You're not going to be in that scenario where you're loading a screen, or you're in a lift, a subway, or you're going through a crack. You're just there, right? And that just basically keeps your attention on what's going on that much longer. If I hope I'm explaining it.
It's kind of like if you're racing a car, the straight bits are not a bit boring, but it's the bends and the turning so you're constantly turning around this racetrack constantly.
Yeah. That's a very good way of. That's a very, very good analogy. Games designers with this technology in this generation can deliver you many more bends. Yeah, many more bends, and yeah, that's no. I mean, I think I finally get it, because when I initially thought about all of this, it was just about pure technology, stats. They can do this, they can do that, But really, we're talking about outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's why Nintendo, let's talk about Smash Brothers, right? Just as an example, graphics are good enough. They're not amazing. The textures are basic, but you look at the characters, you get drawn into their world when you play them, and it brings back memories, and they have fun animations, and you just feel that excitement, right? And so I think some of I think you're saying the same thing. Some of the games on the more powerful consoles are either really good or they're shit. There's not many games in the middle. That middle market's kind of dropped out a little bit. And you think there'll be a resurgence of some of the gooder games in probably the middle, I'd say, but just by the fact that the world design is going to change now, basically. That's where, going back to what Al was saying, is I'm of the belief as well that, and kind of why I'm losing interest in. I'm happy to play Destiny just on my PS5, and then maybe there's a few other games that come out that are like Starfield. Let's say that it might have a feeling of adventure like I got from Breath of the Wild, right? And I would want to play it. But until VR comes and there's a complete shift, or what you're describing about the world design fundamentally changes, I think that would be probably the two next levels of excitement where it's going to come from. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. And imagine if PSVR 2 was usable on your PC as well.
If only.
Yeah.
If only.
Yeah.
Just quickly on that, if I take Destiny as an example, right? The guns are fun. The playing as a group is fun. Chasing for a weapon that's elusive is fun. But if I look at the actual level designs, they're very static and repeating kind of reuse assets and lots of loading areas, and it's boring in that sense.
Yeah, Jay, if Destiny at some point was able to leverage not just this SSD, because that's just a bit of hardware, but they were to leverage direct storage and whatever the PS kind of 5 uses, you guys would be raiding like anything, because those raids would be, I can only imagine they would be absolutely amazing. Yeah, and I'll kind of try and elaborate when we're kind of wrapping up, but to what I mean.
I can imagine I'm just my brain is thinking about some sort of some water tank with all these objects floating and doing some dynamic stuff, and you do the raid, and that encounter is literally never the same again because of the dynamic stuff versus the static level. Pulling lever,
the level of variation would just take a step up. It would just be pushed up straight away. You know what I mean? If they could design around that.
Yeah, I'd almost kind of forgotten about the impact of Ratchet and Clank and what they've done with that, and that being the first generation game doing that as well.
It's amazing. Yeah, I can't, because I was a bit. I mean, we'll get to it at the end, but we'll get to it. I think we're drifting again, and I think I think we all know our fave generations, obviously PS2, GameCube, Xbox for me. Jay, you've got two. You've got the SNES and N64, and Al, PlayStation, Sega Saturn, What the hell was kind of Nintendo doing back then? It was
N64.
was
It's
an N64.
N64. Yeah. They were in between SNES to N64. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. But it's all, they're also important. That's the thing. It's like it's very difficult to pick one because there's really joyful moments through all of those generations. Yeah. But guys, with that all said and done, before this turns into a future state of gaming conversation, yeah, we gotta call it, and we gotta, I think it's time to say kind of goodbye and wrap up. Yeah.
Cool.
So guys, it's got to that time of the night, day or otherwise. I asked the regular questions, what tech and gaming stuff have we been doing? We say goodbyes, but equally, I just, this is going to be the last podcast this year. So just a couple of sentences or some words about, what we thought of the year that's now kind of on its way out. 2021's gone or going, and what we hoped or hopes for the new year. And then, call time for the year, I think. Yeah. I think, Al, I'm going to start with you this time. Youngest first. Ish.
Oh god. Okay, so gaming-wise, pretty much the same. So, Diablo 2 Resurrected. Probably, actually, I've been so busy at work that I think I've been struggling to find time for stuff. I've been giving up Genshin quite a bit. Started to pick it up again. Still played, Punishing Grey Raven and stuff like that. But it has been very light for me on that sort of stuff. Whilst the kind of rush up to Christmas, and now that I'm kind of off work now until the new year. Hopefully get some more time to go and do stuff. I've still got the backlog of. I've got a new SSD I need to install. I've got the thermal pads I want to install onto my graphics card. But yeah, there's just those sorts of things that I still want to do, but hopefully have a bit of time for. Yeah, I don't know. I think for this year it's been interesting. I didn't expect myself to be so immersed by mobile games and the stuff around, whether it's Genshin or Punishing Grey Raven, but those have been eye-opening for me, I think, throughout this year. And it's interesting those kind of gambling gacha-based systems that are in there. There is things that we probably still need to talk about around gambling and gambling addiction. But yeah, it's massively interesting, and it's probably the way gaming is slowly going towards. And there probably needs to be, I don't know, more safeguards, more education, more stuff around it to protect people, because there are significant dangers associated with it too, and stuff like that. And I don't know. I think I'm probably looking forward to next year is the real kickoff to PlayStation 5 and the Xbox, the real battle to actually happen, I think, is what I'm expecting into next year. Obviously COVID, etc., has produced numbers of delays, whether it's supply chain or other things. But I'm kind of looking forward to that PlayStation and Xbox battle in its kind of, I guess, higher gear now. They're going in full throttle to an extent. Now that we're seeing more of those releases coming out, so.
Yeah, if there is truly a battle, though.
Yes.
They were battling against one another is also up for debate.
Yeah. So that's what I'm kind of looking forward to, and I think if anything, I would love to see the PlayStation VR 2, hopefully next year. Fingers crossed, but I don't know.
And for PC also.
If it comes to PC, it's a guaranteed buy for me.
It will do.
I think that would be smart. I think that would be.
They are definitely pushing PC as part of this generation. It'll be on there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more I thought about it, the more I felt that is there any reason not to?
Especially with the metaverse stuff happening as well.
Exactly. Whatever that means.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I don't know. I don't think I don't know. There's obviously the multiple flavors of the metaverse that's going to be out there, I think, into next year, but I don't expect them to be really, really operating that well into next year.
Oh feels like
5 years away. The year beyond that, and stuff like that. So, but But yeah, that's the sort of things I'm looking at.
Cool, Al. Significantly geeky, which is good. But you got to get off those mobile games, man. That's what you need to really do.
It's just so accessible.
You're like a druggie.
Yeah. All right, Jay. I think you're definitely up
cool.
next.
So I've been playing Destiny 2. The Bungie anniversary pack had come out in December. I've been playing that. It's been pretty good. We've got the Witch Queen coming out in February, which is around the corner. This year is kind of summarise it as I haven't played that many different games. I've kind of had a love-hate relationship with Destiny, and at one point was going to quit it and come back, and I've come to this place of realisation that it's always going to be part of my life. And I think it's more so Bungie games because of the social aspect. And this year also, I've kind of made the decision I'm not buying many games until I get through some of my backlog, particularly on my PS5 and my Switch. Looking into next year, I'm really intrigued by what's happening with Xbox and PlayStation Wars, particularly on the Game Pass and whatever Sony's equivalent will be next year. My gut feeling is I think Xbox is going to be strong this generation, and I actually want it to win. And I'm interested to see where Sony's first-party single-player narrative-driven games land next year. I kind of want them to not be good, so that I've got a reason to go onto Xbox and just get Game Pass, because that was so. Yeah, that will solve all my problems. I can just have my Switch and Game Pass, and I'll be happy. But
no chance.
Specific games I'm looking forward next year. I'm really intrigued about see what Starfield's going to be like. I've just had this craving of some, RPG, flying spaceships in space, landing on planets. Yeah, and then the Sony ones, I will play them like God of War and Next Horizon, but I wouldn't say I'm that massively excited for those because of the reason we talked about. I think it'd be better. I just feel like they're going to be better graphics, not the game world's going to change massively and step forward.
They're cross-gen games
exactly,
still, I feel.
Exactly.
So.
And the other thing I'm hoping come out next year is Mario Kart 9. Because that is long overdue.
Yeah. There's definitely going to be one. I mean, that's for sure.
Mario Kart 8 is still hitting. It was always in the top 10, top 5, still. Yeah, that's me.
Okay, what have I been doing? So, I've been playing Halo Infinite campaign on my PC, and you know what? It's Halo.
Yeah,
it's Halo. Oh my God, it's Halo.
Tried the multiplayer.
Thank God for that. No, I'm more of a PvE campaign guy. With what I paid the campaign, I didn't get too far because I just wanted to kind of, yeah, is this Halo or not? Or is it? Are you shitting me? Are you Halo or not Halo? Right? And it's Halo.
Good.
Yeah, it just felt good. And
mouse controller.
I kind of just. No, well, I've got an option for mouse, but I've actually got my Xbox controller. I just because I've always played Halo on the consoles. I've never really played it on the PC, and so I just went kind of Xbox controller with it. Yeah. So I've obviously got to kind of grind that out. I also started, and this is long overdue. I've left this way late. I've started playing The Last of Us 2, on PlayStation. And what can I say? For a PS4 game, the thing looks amazing. I mean, I don't know what Sony give their developers.
Harassment.
Or what they pay, but I mean, they do some amazing stuff. Possibly. Gunpoint motivation, I don't know what it is, but I mean, it's another one of these first-party Sony games that just looks amazing, for, taking into account what it was targeted to run on. So, and obviously, I think on PS5 it runs at 60 FPS.
Yeah, free patch for that.
So they've ironed out that kink. So for me, it's pretty good. So I've started that. I'm waiting to get some time to play Guardians of the Galaxy. So I kind of got that, and once I get into a little bit more with these games, I've actually got Games Pass on PC now. So I'm gonna try Forza, Psychonauts 2. Let's see how far we get. So I'm doing that. What else? Really tech side. I mean, in between jobs now. But just trying to kind of continue learning more and more tech as much as I can. And as for this year, look, I've just look, number one, I started a YouTube channel and podcast, right? So I'm quite interested. You know, obviously that for me that was my memories of this year. Obviously, new generation started. You know, following it's been super interesting. My hopes for next year really are quite simple. I think I just want to see more games that take advantage of the new hardware that we've got. You know, the current generation, and I kind of touched upon it in the previous topic that I've recently finished Ratchet and Clank, and it's probably the only game on the market now, I would say, that really makes an attempt to take advantage of everything that the new hardware has got to offer. Yeah, really graphics, sound, controls, SSD. Yeah, and at first I was a bit lukewarm with it actually, because Ratchet and Clank, you know what to expect. Ratchet and Clank game, it's like relatively comparably simplistic gameplay, not super deep, but there's something about being able to stretch out some of these scenarios and kind of like take the scenario on a left turn, a hard left turn, and then take it on a hard, like right turn, whatever the case may be, right? I just remember the last boss battle in Ratchet and Clank, and it seemed to go on for ages, by the way, but I wasn't bored, and I was totally engaged with it, yeah. And it was, it wasn't necessarily the most difficult boss in, final boss battle, but I'm getting the sense that the kind of SSD or this new generation of hardware allowed the level of variation that I got from it, and it just kind of, So I'm kind of looking. What I'm trying to say really is I'm looking forward to more games being less cross-gen and taking advantage of what we've been given this new generation. It won't happen for a while. I mean, I just, as I kind of think the batch of games coming out in February will be absolutely cross-gen, because they're as far as PlayStation is concerned, they're all running on PS4, even with the Xbox exclusives. Halo runs on the previous generation of Xbox anyway. But when that's all done and dusted next year, and I'm thinking it will be, that's when the fun really stops. Yeah. And that's when we'll know. And that's when, the game designers and whatever else will be allowed to flex their muscles properly. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm glad Ratchet and Clank exists, because if that game didn't exist, right, I would think it would be like any other, any other gen.
Yep.
Yeah. And now I'm pretty sure it's not going to be like that.
Interesting.
And and that's pretty much it. Really, what I'm hoping for the new year. And I mean, we'll have an end of the year wrap up, maybe kind of like start of next year. So look, with that all said and done, I think it's goodbye from me, Joel.
Yeah. Goodbye from me, Al.
Goodbye from me, Jay.
And whatever you're doing, like, subscribe, and have a stellar day. And basically, also, Happy Christmas and New Year's. Not forgetting that. Alright, guys, that's a wrap for the year, I think.
Nice.
Nice.
Good job.